Europe, Asia, and the rest of the world, engaging all Dominicans at home and abroad on our agriculture, our economy, our foreign relations, our justice system, our governance, our international competitiveness, our education, our world class festivals and entertainment, sports, politics, regional cooperation, and much more, globally positioning Dominica within the Caribbean. Join the conversation on The Global View on Q. Tune in, call us, have your say. The Global View on Q, only on Q95, the big station. The Global View
So,
on Q.
good evening to all, and good evening to you in Radio Land and on the internet at home and abroad. Thank you so much for choosing Q95. This is the Global View on Q. A warm welcome to all of our Q family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It's the Tuesday, 14th of January, and it's the second Tuesday of 2025, exactly 8:10 p.m. at Q95. We're sorry for the delay in tuning in tonight. Sorry to keep you waiting. The big station. Yeah, we're live on our radio frequencies on QTV, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Please follow us at Q95 FM Radio. Share the live, like our pages, or on your numbers on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Please get the latest breaking news and reviews on Q95 because you know it's true if you hear it on Q. So we continue to revive the spirit of graciousness, love, and peace, prosperity, and unity among Carinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. It is our first Global View on Q show for 2025, and we continue to engage with our local, regional, and global Q family listeners and friends of Dominica at home and abroad. Our guest tonight is supposed to be National Security Minister Rayburn Blackmore. We have not yet seen him, but I did send him a note to indicate that he can just log in whenever he's ready, and we'd be happy to receive him. And then, of course, we're here with also Dr. Justice Dr. Irving Andre and two of our regular folks there, our seasoned journalist and UWP President Lennox Linton and retired police superintendent, also a member of the Electoral Reform Coalition. That's Nicholas George. He's here tonight as well with us. So here are a few of my talking points. In a modern democracy, elections have consequences, which can be good or bad. And tonight, our conversation will focus on required best practice electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations for Dominica right now, in order to ensure free and fair elections on a level playing field, of course, after 25 years of having one regime in office. And so we'd like to do all of that to move Dominica forward socially, economically, and culturally. And here are a couple of things that we need now in terms of electoral and campaign finance reform. We need complete voter re-registration in Dominica to ensure a clean electoral list. And we say no overseas registration or reconfirmation is required. We need compliance with and enforcement of strict observation of the true meaning of ordinary residents in Dominica for voting. We need specific total outlaw of bribery and treating in Dominica's elections so as to avoid any and all doubt about that illegal practice. We need voter ID cards with biometric data, address and date of birth and other key information, as was recommended, in fact, by Sir Dennis Barr and the Electoral Reform Coalition. We're calling for equal direct access to state-owned media and other media houses by all political parties. We're saying by direct, we mean we don't want to have to wait for approval or direction from the Electoral Commission in order for those media houses to act on the requests of those political parties and agencies. We need campaign finance reform laws and regulations that reflect the recommendations of Sir Dennis Barron and the Electoral Reform Coalition. And we have all those details. We're not going to give all those details now because they'll come up in the course of the discussion, I'm sure. We want to restructure and expand the membership of the Electoral Commission to ensure broader public representation, to ensure efficacy, transparency, accountability, and so on, and to remove any undue partisan political influence. We want to do this restructuring of the Electoral Commission along the lines as has been recommended by Sir Dennis Byron and the ERC. And one of the things that we'd like to do, because we have seen from recent experience that it is creating a little bit of a concern here, and we want to recommend that the age of the retirement of the chief elections officer be extended to 65, as was recommended by Sir Dennis Byron and the Electoral Reform Coalition. So all of this, we're suggesting all of this that we need to do in terms of electoral reform to bring an end to this era of total power in the hands of any one man who can say, I run things. No law nor constitution will prevent me from doing what I want or from accumulating massive personal wealth, even if the people and the public officers are struggling and paying a very heavy price for self-serving, lavish, opulent lifestyles of members of the political directorate who may just want more and more power to take more. But history has taught us, of course, that every dictator has an expiry date. Now, the framers of Dominica's constitution, I'm sure, did not anticipate that any wannabe dictator would surface in this little island, Dominica, who would act as if he is above the law and the constitution, so as to aggrandize and enrich himself at the expense of ordinary hard-working Dominicans, many of whom may remain his followers and supporters at great personal sacrifice. So I look forward tonight to the suggestions of our guests and members of our panel, our listeners, our callers and viewers on Facebook and YouTube as to what needs to be done to move beyond this era of stagnation and through free and fair elections on a level playing field to put true patriots in office who will do a few things for us that we need to be done, which have not been done over quite a few years. We should have been done, in fact. We want to eliminate any and all corruption or illegal drug dealings in our governance. We want to invest in competitive cutting-edge infrastructure, physical, social, and digital, to create a strong, sustainable economy and a powerful middle class. Provide affordable health insurance and healthcare for all, especially for our senior citizens and the poor and underprivileged. We certainly would want to eliminate large, non-performing government and implement lean, maximum performing good governance that delivers real, tangible results. We want to create an enabling policy environment that is conducive to a real dynamic private sector growth engine that attracts and embraces true entrepreneurs, sustainable investments, and the creation of a solid middle class and generational wealth. We certainly would want this new group of patriots going into office to eliminate or reduce and simplify burdensome regulations so as to facilitate investments and growth and eliminate cumbersome, time-wasting bureaucracy, insider trading, and kleptocracy. We want to ensure that this group of new patriots in governance would fully invest in cost-competitive renewable energy to ensure domestic and international industrial competitiveness. And we want to make sure that major investments in organic agriculture, in manufacturing, in water, in processing, in knowledge-driven, innovative eco-industries. And we want to create a competitive modern workforce with high-level knowledge and skills and high-tech training, fueled by select inward migration of trending futuristic knowledge industry skills, so as to attract investments that provide great returns to investors and pay very good wages and salaries to Dominicans. And we certainly would want to establish foreign affairs policies that are based on Dominica's best progressive permanent interests and not just on self-serving personalized friendships of some in the political directorate. And I have indicated before, I think Singapore socio-economic strategy is a good example that we can take a look at. So we need to do all of those things, and we're hoping that once we have free and fair elections on a level playing field, that we could have elections which will have those kinds of consequences that will bring in a group of patriots who will do all of those things in order to achieve real economic independence with good paying jobs, a lower cost of living, better quality of life and higher standards of living, low utility costs, more sensible civil, democratic, collaborative political engagement, more investments in agriculture and manufacturing, processing for export, much better natural resource management and environmental conservation practices to bolster the resilience and sustainability of the people of Dominica after free and fair elections, citizens' autonomy, and youth self-actualization. You notice I'm mentioning all those things because you see, we have been under this one regime for 25 years from January 2000, and it seems as if that most of all of those things, none of them have really been done in the way that I'm describing them, which in fact can be done. With very little progress to show after these 25 years as our youth, they continue to be sidelined and left behind as our economy slides down a very slippery slope. But together we must repair our reputational damage and reverse the assault on our consolidated fund. We must bring our money back home to be used to boost the prosperity of our people, give them hope again, rebuild once again our thriving democratic middle class and small business sector. So we must really all together, and we have to really make the commitment as we go forward. Once we get those, and that is why it's critical to get those electoral reform laws and regulations in place, because as we say, elections have those consequences, good or bad. And so we must all together prepare to all together to work hard to advance ordinary people's economic interests, to improve their quality of life and living standards, help them make real progress again as they had in fact made under previous governments. We must look forward to being able again to care for our families, our children, our cottage enterprises, our education and skills training, our healthcare, our farmers, our skills tradesmen, our fishermen and electricians and plumbers, our bus owners and drivers, our teachers and nurses and carpenters and contractors, masons, tipper truckers, public officers, police and fire officers, all ordinary people who have been sidelined for too many years. All of us have to be in this together and look after one another. It does not mean that we do not want to embrace foreign investors and foreign contractors, but I think we have to put Dominica and Dominicans first. So my guest tonight, who we have not yet seen, but we hope that we may join us later, National Security Minister Reuben Blackmore, and of course, Dr. Andrian and Lennox and Nicholas George. We hope we will all share their ideas and recommendations on these talking points and more, with a view to creating this new era, that paradigm shift to a path to free and fair democratic elections. That is so critical for us. We need that path to free and fair democratic elections. We need real independence and real self-actualization, dynamic socioeconomic autonomy, real growth, and we certainly could do with a lot of generational wealth that has been really eluding us for the last so many years.
That's right.
So let us all share our ideas on how to help restore good, accountable, and transparent governance, put Dominica back on the path of economic recovery, restore democracy and respect in the global community. After 25 years, it is high time to put a new dynamic, law-abiding group of people in government as soon as possible, to implement a progressive, people-driven, growth-oriented, tangible action plan for the benefit of all Dominicans, and I say all Dominicans because that is not happening now. So let's now get down to business. As usual, we invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, help us give our usual huge shout out, our hugs and loves and appreciation, and a big thank you to our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, our police and fire officers, our teachers, our doctors, nurses, and public and private sector patriots and friends of Dominica at home and abroad. And as always, somebody's mic may be open and might want to ask you to close it temporarily. And as always, I say we welcome each and every Dominican and friend of Dominica in the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are tonight, in every nook and cranny, in every village, in every community, at home in Dominica and abroad, in the region and globally. Thank you again, Sherwin, as usual, for keeping us on the air. And Lambi, big up yourself on the console, directing the traffic. We will take your calls. As you know, the people's voice is always a priority on Q and on the Global View on Q. So call us anytime during the program. Lambi will take your calls. He will just give us a little signal and we will take your calls. So now I go first, of course, to our, I was hoping that we would have been joined by, well, I think we are joined by our guest, National Security Minister, Reuben Blackmore. Mr. Blackmore, are you able to hear me? I guess
Yeah.
Mr. Black.
Good evening. Good evening to you. Good evening.
Oh, great, great, great. I'm glad that you can hear me. I'm happy to have you here. Please, very welcome. So I want to give you a little moment to settle down, but I mean, if you're able to, I just wanted to go to you first as our very special guest tonight to give you a 5 minute opening statement so you can start the ball rolling on our conversation tonight. And then after that, I would give each of our other panelists the same 5 minutes to make the opening remarks. And thereafter, we will go around the table and we will express our views on the whole
To your
business of
guests, and thank you
looking for. All right. So
for
over to you, Mr. Black.
inviting me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you very well. You
Can you
can
hear
go
me?
right. Yes, go right ahead.
Okay.
I'm
Thank you
hearing
very much. To you, Mr. Gregor. Good evening to your guests. It's for me an honor to be
you're going in and out though. I'm not sure your audio is going in and out. So I'm not sure if it is your location, but for some reason the audio has stopped. I'm not sure whether you're driving or on the road or something, but if you are, then maybe what you can do, we can probably go over to Dr. Andre, and then you can probably join us as soon as you're available. Just let us know. And once we can hear you again, we're certainly going to bring you in right away. So, Dr. Andre, it looks like we're having a little difficulty with Minister Blackmore's audio. So, could you just let's get the ball rolling, and then he will join us as soon as he's ready.
Let me ask the proverbial question. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you very, very well, sir.
Loud and clear. Well, let me say Happy New Year to your wonderful listeners, those who've toiled, 8 hours, 9 hours for the day, and who are here this evening. They're here because obviously they're looking to feel somewhat bullish, buoyant about 2025, certainly as it relates to Dominica. They want to feel good and bullish about the burning issues of the day, whether it's campaign finance reform, electoral reform, the justice system and how it operates, whether it's the employment situation. They need some good news. And it's not good news just for modern men, it's for men, women, and young people. And that is basically where we're at. Obviously, the pressing issue is the whole question of electoral reform. Quite clearly, the position taken by the government does not meet those deep foundational changes that are needed to ensure free and fair elections in Dominica. Conspicuous by its absence is any mention whatsoever of campaign finance reform. Conspicuous by its absence is the absence of any reference to cleaning up the voters list. Conspicuous by its absence is the refusal to address the whole question as to the meaning or the criterion for voter eligibility in Dominica as we speak, the residential component. Instead, what we are given is a concoction, the ingredients of which, in my respectful view, and I say that with great deference to any other panelists, it's nothing personal, but you have ingredients of deceit. You have ingredients of self interest. Why else would you propose two definitions for persons who are ordinarily resident, whether in Dominica or elsewhere, and give them the ability to vote? The only cynical reason is to dilute the vote to such an extent that Dominica's resident in Dominica will never be able to change their administration because Dominicans residents abroad outnumber Dominicans residents in Dominica by a significant margin. If that is the band movie in terms of electoral reform that you need, then so be it. But if in fact you dream of something fair, something which preserves the right of every resident Dominican to choose their own administration, after all, they're the ones who are going to be living on the island. After all, they're the ones who are going to be dealing with the policies of the electorate. After all, they are the ones who are going to be dealing with the persecution, with the vilification, with the ostracism. They are the ones who are going to be dealing with 1%, 2%, 3% if they're lucky, increase in a year. While their ministerial colleagues, they walk away with a bounce and a step, driving vehicles whose license plate says G77, whatever that means. Walking away with 20, 25, 30% increase, Mr. G. If that is the state of affairs that they need, that is to say, to stand by the side and see people cut style on them, Jafe do you, sir. All I will ask in summary, Zopa Moon 2, guys. I will call it quits at this point, Mr. G.
And thank you for the introduction. I'm very sorry that we lost Mr. Blackmore there. I hope that he'll be able to log back in. I think he was having some technical difficulties. Maybe it was his location. So I hope that if he gets to a good location, he can log back in so we can have this conversation here tonight. We really appreciate him coming on board with us tonight. But I wanted to go over to
Well, the guy could have fallen sick.
your can mute your mic, Irving, and Lennox. I wanted to go over to you. That give me your opening remarks on this, because as you can see, we're coming down to the wire now. You know, these bills have been read once in the Parliament, and there has been a promise by the Prime Minister that the other two readings will take place soon. I'm not so sure exactly what the schedule is for that, but certainly it seems to me this thing is imminent and we have to work on it. And I frankly would like to see those bills that when they be modified to reflect some of the things that we're talking about here tonight. So I'm hoping that the powers that be are listening carefully, because everything we say it not with any malicious intent, but with good intention to make things better in our electoral system. So certainly, Lennox, let's get your opening remarks on this notion of what we would like to see in electoral reform, campaign finance reform in Dominica.
Thank you very much, Sheridan, and a very good Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to all the listeners to the Global View on Q. Happy New Year, Dr. Andre. Happy New Year, Nicholas George, and Lambi in the studio. Also, Happy New Year to you and Mr. Sherwin Norris and the rest of the Q family. Sheridan, we start the year. This is the 14th of January. This is your first program for the year. And we're talking about electoral reform. It's a matter that we have spoken about a lot over the last 20 years. And we have come to the point now where the government, after a long hiatus, has decided that it is going to go to Parliament in this first quarter of 2025 with 3 bills for enactment to give effect to quote-unquote electoral reform. And those are the bills for an Electoral Commission Act. Number 1, the bill for the revised House of Assembly Elections Act that will repeal the existing one, and the revised Registration of Electors Act that will repeal the existing one as well. Those were introduced in Parliament on the 16th of December 2024. That means they had their first reading. And the indication from the government is that those 3 bills, which are intended to give effect to the long-awaited reform of the electoral process in Dominica, will happen. The enactment of those bills will happen before the end of this first quarter, meaning before the end of before the 31st of March, 2025. We have reviewed those bills in the United Workers' Party, and we are of the view that they don't go far enough. They are inadequate to ensure free, fair, and credible elections in Dominica. And that is significant because we have been at this for a long time. And you almost feel, given all the stops and starts and given the inordinate delays by the government, that we have been on this merry-go-round where, now we see it, now we don't. We have all these recommendations from the election observer missions that come to look at our elections and comment on them and give us ideas, and they do that regularly. And they make recommendations and we don't listen to them, and we had our own initiatives in Dominica. You know, there was a time when on the matter of ID cards for voting and so on, the Electoral Commission actually hired or brought on board now Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley. In those days, she was in the opposition and she was a practicing lawyer and so on, and with obvious good experience in the parliament for many years at that point, back in 2011, 2012, 2013, thereabout, to do an exercise to advise the Electoral Commission on the introduction of ID cards and that sort of thing. She did the consultancy, and Alec Lawrence, as I understand it, decided that what Mia Motley did there was trash and ought not to have been considered. All part of the protection of the winning legacy of Roosevelt Skerritt. Since that consultancy, Mia Motley has led the Barbados Labour Party to 2 victories in elections where her party holds all the seats in the parliament. She's in the second of those 2 terms. And, you know, I'm making that point to say what is happening. A lot of things that are happening while we have been sitting in Dominica waiting for this reform of the electoral process, only to find out now that what is before us really doesn't cut it, and will require serious attention if in fact the process that we're reforming is going to be fit for the purpose of free and fair elections in Dominica. Let me remind the people of Dominica that it is not just the United Workers' Party, other groups in the opposition movement, civil society organizations, and so on that have been concerned and have been talking about the necessity for free and fair elections in Dominica. In December of 2014, the Commonwealth Observer Mission concluded that the general election in Dominica was free, but it was not necessarily fair. And the Commonwealth Observer Mission said that was due to, quote, multiple instances of cheating and bribery, including the transportation of electors to the island to vote, and the apparent abuses of incumbency, including a lack of impartiality in the provision of public service, end of quote. You had the admonition in 2022, July, by the Caribbean Court of Justice, our highest court, about the importance of us in Dominica dealing with what the CCJ described as a tainted electoral process. At the point, Sheridan, that the CCJ was talking about this, remember what was before it. The CCJ in 2021 ruled on an application to, well, an appeal that came before it involving criminal charges for treating that had been levied against 15 members of the DLP, and which was refused by the court, by the High Court. They said the summonses were not properly issued or something of the sort. It went to the appeal court. The appeal court said yes, the summonses were properly executed, and the persons charged were properly before the court. The persons accused were properly before the court, and the matter should be tried. It then went to the Caribbean Court of Justice, and the CCJ ruled yes, the summonses were proper, and the people accused were properly before the court and should face the criminal charges of treating. And so they ordered the chief magistrate to set a date. And when the date was set, then the lawyers for the government went to the DPP asking for the case to be quashed. The case was dutifully quashed under the constitutional authority granted to the DPP to do that. So, but the CCJ had seen the evidence that came forward in that case. It also saw the evidence from the 2019 elections, on the basis of which it concluded, listen, this is a tainted electoral process that you're dealing with in Dominica. And so the CCJ commented there remain grave areas of concern about how the process of the 2019 elections were conducted and future elections in Dominica ought not to proceed with these or similar states. We had a snap election in December of 2022 after promises that there would be reform of the system after 2019 before we went into another election. And about that snap election, which again was held with no reforms of the process, no ID cards, no cleaning of the voters list. For example, the Organization of American States Observer Mission advised, quote, "It is clear that Dominica cannot proceed to another election under the current rules. It will therefore be essential to have a new electoral framework in place before the next poll," 2022. So now we have these new and revised election laws, and we are saying they do not adequately address the critical matter of removing those taints on the process to clear the way for free and fair elections in Dominica. And we're talking about the things like the clean, accurate voters list, which is only going to come about if we properly apply the constitutional provisions for voting in Dominica. And we properly understand that the right to vote in Dominica is a right to vote for representation in the Parliament of Dominica, not anything else, a right to vote for representation in the Parliament of Dominica. And so persons voting for representation in the Parliament of Dominica who are ordinarily resident outside of Dominica is a violation of the constitutional right to vote, and it is a taint on the electoral process for fair elections in Dominica. Even so, we have an electoral process that is allowing for a register of electors with more persons than the resident population of Dominica. That system, that electoral process cannot be fair. If we are to have an accurate list of voters who are eligible based on the constitutional requirement of citizenship, age, residency, there has to be, as you said, Sheridan Gregoire, a total registration of voters and provisions for cleansing of the voters list annually. The confirmation of registration, which has been proposed and which is in the legislation, the proposed legislation to go before Parliament, instead of a re-registration that is confirming eligibility to vote, will not remove the taint of the bloated, inaccurate voters list, which is open to fraudulent manipulation. There are specific taints on the process that have to be dealt with, like this one, that are not touched in the legislation. As a matter of fact, we consider the legislation is seeking to normalize the manipulation of the so-called overseas vote for the benefit of the incumbents. And unless we are courageous enough to deal with those things, unless the people insist that we cannot go forward with provisions that don't deal with these kind of taints, then we will not have electoral reform that means anything for free and fair elections in Dominica. And now the people of Dominica are being called on to insist that they must speak to the government, they must speak to the representatives in the Parliament and ensure that what they get out of this new round of legislation for electoral reform is actually what the people want. And I'm sure we'll get a chance to come back to more of those states on the process that are not being dealt with.
Yes.
Because we have things like ID cards and bribery and treating and access to media and so on. But
Yeah,
I want to...
But Lennox, I want to stop you there because there's so much more that we have to talk about. But the reason I wanted to put a pause there for you, because I will come back to you, of course, because fortunately, Mr. Blackmore has been able to log in again. I think he tried logging in earlier. He did log in, but he was having some technical difficulties. But I'm happy that he has now solved that and he's back with us. So let me just take the opportunity to let all of our listeners know on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you are listening globally. And I can see already that people are listening all over the world. Just want to welcome you, Mr. Blackmore. Very, very warm welcome to you. I'm very happy that you can make it. And I believe that you will bring some clarity on what your perspective is on those laws that have been read in Parliament for the first time. I remember some time ago, we had the AG here on this program. We had a very good discussion on the same matter of electoral reform. So we expect tonight that your contribution here just as substantive, and so we're looking forward to it. Let me give you a few minutes then to make your opening remarks on what you really want to exchange in dialogue with the public on tonight. Mr. Blackmore, over to you.
Thank you very much. Of course, my both devices, Apple, and something you have issues on, so I have to resort to using my cell phone. But I'm hoping already, certainly, as we can have a discussion that is respectful, one that will lead towards some clarity on some of the vexing issues that we are trying to actually resolve over the years. And I believe we can have an adult discussion. And then within the democratic space, and then when we're negotiating, it's almost impossible to get everything that you want. And I also appreciate that anytime you're speaking about electoral reform, is one that the opposition can live with, but that is contingent upon an opposition that is reasonable, so to speak. Now, I listened just now to a number of issues cataloged just now by Mr. Linton, and one of the fundamental issues is the cleansing of the list. And the issue is, what connotation do we therefore apply to the cleansing of the list? And how can we achieve the same objective by doing different things, and at the same time do not impose on citizens' right to vote? And I am for any system that creates a semblance of transparency. Now, if you go on to Section 49 of the Registration of Electors Act, and there's also a subsidiary element to it by way of regulation to give utility to that parent act. And it speaks to the confirmation of registration. What do we mean by that? Now, the fact of the matter is, Mr. Linton made reference to the fact that a bloated list and dead people voting. Now, going forward, once the proposed measure, insofar as the specific proposed act that I referenced, the Registration of Electors Act, Section 49 states that there shall be a confirmation process. Now, it's important to note that in order for your name to remain on the list, you have to present yourself to an enrollment officer appointed by the chief registering officer. To do that, if you fail to do so, under Section 49, subsection 3, your name shall be deleted. So I'm looking forward to my mother, who died many years ago, I miss so much, to come back to the polling booth or district where she normally votes and show up. So, and we went further to ensure, and with the view to appeasing, I use the word appease, because we want peace, the opposition, to say, okay, if you're living overseas, you are going to come back home to confirm your name on the list.
Let me just ask you this.
So what I'm trying to say, Mr. Linton, so going forward, Reverend Blackmore, who has been voting from 1985, can only vote once the law is passed. And mark you, the commission has 30 days after the effective date of the law coming into operation to prepare us for the confirmation process. He can give us, or the commission can give us 12 months, and there's provision for an additional 3 months, 15 months. So within 15 months, all of us who are already registered to vote must present ourselves.
So let me ask you, Mr. Blackmore, is there any reason why you would not agree to a total re-registration in Dominica? Is there something, do you find something wrong with that? You don't think that would help to cleanse that same list that you're talking about?
But no. Mr. Gregor, before Mr. Blackmore answers you, let me just clarify something I was saying a while ago, and to make the distinction between what the law provides for and what is actually needed. The law provides, the law that is being proposed to go before the parliament in this first quarter is proposing at 49 confirmation of the fact that somebody has been registered to vote. It is not confirming, it's not confirming the eligibility of the person to vote. So with respect to people who have been living overseas, and remember, you cannot get on the register of voters if you're not resident in Dominica for a period of at least 3 months, right? So the registration to vote is based on residence in Dominica. That's what the Constitution provides for. And persons who are living overseas, the Prime Minister himself has said, you cannot be living in Manhattan and expect the Parle Rep in Sineku to fix your road when it has potholes in Manhattan. You cannot get representation in Manhattan from the Parliament in Dominica when you are a resident overseas. And the right to vote, again, Mr. Blackmore, please, the right to vote in Dominica is a right to vote for representation in the Parliament of Dominica. Okay. Can I respond to that, Mr. Gregor?
Oh yes, by all means. Yeah, I want to give you enough time for you to respond to all things.
No, the thing is, seemingly, Mr. Linton is mixing the two. Now, we are talking about somebody being qualified to vote. If you were to go under Section 6.1 of the Registration of Electors Act, you see the demarcations clearly spelled out in law. Once your name appears on the voters list, you have a right to vote. In terms of your qualification for your name to get on a list, it's important to reference Section 7.1. 1, you have to be a Dominican. 2, above the age of 18. 3, a Commonwealth citizen, having resided in Dominica for 1 year, and then having continuously lived in a particular address for 3 months. So that's the qualification. That gets you on the list. Now, I believe, even if the Labour Party were in opposition, I take very strongly somebody's right to vote. And I believe to remove it, carte blanche, and to put the whole populace, including the older people, through this, for me, a very protracted, unnecessary endeavor to achieve a particular goal, which can be done in a more democratic and sane manner. So the question is, what are you trying? Because electoral reform, the cornerstone of any electoral reform and endeavor, should be to make it easier for people to vote. I studied in Canada, and when you go to pay your driver's license, you can register to vote. The last election in America, this is one of the biggest democracies in the world, a population of 40 million people. They were targeting people overseas to vote. For matter of fact, on election day in America, you can register to vote. And we have to understand what I studied, and my understanding of law, and one of my majors of law and society, is the interplay between the law and social institution, of which, of course, people are the greatest constituents who the law seeks to impact on. And so it means, therefore, our social and cultural realities, these are the facts, social facts, that determine what laws should be enacted, because the law cannot operate in a vacuum. Right. So what are we seeking to achieve?
So, Mr. Blackmore, yes, Dr. Andre is a gentleman I've known for a while.
Yes.
And he also studied in Canada. Did you study in Canada, Dr. Andre? I think he did. Your mic is muted.
Yeah, I think I think so, come to think of it.
But I wanted to give you an opportunity to comment on, you see, because what we're talking about here, Mr. Blackmore, and I think you're contributing very well, and Mr. Leonard Clinton has done that, is the whole question of ensuring you get a clean voters list. And
but that's what they're doing.
Yeah, there are two options here. One is that we're talking about total re-registration in Dominica, and the other option that you're referring to. I want to get Dr. Andre's comments on that, and then one or two other things that you may have mentioned there.
Well, first of all, let me commend Mr. Blackmore from coming on your program.
Yes,
I think that is something good. We can have a dialogue, and we should never be fearful of putting our positions in place. Let me start by something he just said. Once your name is on the voters list, you are eligible to vote. That's what he just said. Let us take that argument to its logical conclusion. My name has been on the voters list for 20 to 30 years. I haven't lived in Dominica since 1984. You are saying that despite the fact I have been out of Dominica for over 40 years, I have the right to vote. And you use the analogy of the American system. Well, Americans abroad pay taxes. Dominicans abroad, they don't pay taxes, but they get COVID benefits in the adopted country, and they stick a government on the people who are resident in Dominica. Not only that, but let us not ignore the point Lennox Linton just made, which you're ignoring totally. The laws as they stand today suggest that to be eligible to vote, you have to be resident in a particular constituency for 3 months before that election. I live in Canada. I'm there for 40 years. You are telling me that because the chief electoral officer has refused to do his job, to claim the voters list, you are telling me I should be given the right to vote. Well, I don't have any right to vote.
No, I not say that.
I leave. And it's not a matter of things. I'm very much connected to Dominica. I own property here. I employ people here and so on. But who has given me the right to decide for Dominicans on the ground what government should govern them for the next 5 years? You tell me, Mr. Blackmore.
Dr. Andre, you a guy I have a lot of respect for. You can understand. I read the books, etc. But you actually since reading certain things into what I said that is unfair.
Okay, sorry.
We are now discussing that the finalized version of 3 proposed measures seeking to reform our elections. And we're talking about the specific issue of cleansing the list. We're talking about a bloated list. We are saying that once, and we're making specific reference to the Registration of Electors Act. And we're saying that a confirmation process would require someone like you, Dr. Andre, to present yourself before an enrollment officer who incidentally is appointed by the commission. All right? And then you present yourself, and you will be issued with a form that states you have to make an application, that states the polling station you belong to, your name. A photograph will be taken by the enrollment officer, attached to that form. If you cannot sign your name, you make a mark. And interestingly, what we are missing, how the law is so transparent, you go under the regulation that gives utility to the Parent Act. It says that the enrollment officer can disallow the confirmation and issue with what you call an interim non-confirmation. And you'll be issued with a form, and you can also appeal. So the law is very transparent. So the issue about the bloated list is being addressed in the proposed measure. That in order for your name to, even if your name is on the bloated list, like me, Reverend Blackmore, everybody knows me. But if I fail to present myself within the 15 months that the commission shall give us to do that, to confirm our name on the list, my name shall be deleted, So there'll be a new list going forward once this law comes into effect. So I'm not sure why you're leaving out, omitting, I hope it's inadvertent, omitting that material fact that we are going to have a clean list going forward, that everybody whose name is on the list, notwithstanding the fact, for your name to have gotten on the list, you would have qualified to get a name on the list in the first place. But you have to present yourself and apply for your confirmation. What is wrong with that? Is that like you impose form? Can I finish, please?
Yes,
Can
yes.
I finish,
Sure. I want to let you finish, Mr.
Can I finish, please?
Yes,
You're in post-pop? You're in post-pop?
Mr. Blackmore, hold on a second.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
I'm saying I want to let you finish, but I just want to let Lambi know, in case there's any calls coming in, just give us a sign so that we can take the calls, guys. I suspect a lot of people may want to give us a little call tonight. Mr. Blackman, let me just let you finish, and I'll let Dr. Andre just respond.
Because I believe what we need to do as adults, I'll give my whole life to country.
Hold on, Mr. Blackwell. Lambi, let's take a quick call. I hope you don't mind. Let's take a call, Dr. Mr.
Yeah,
Blackwell.
no problem.
Go ahead, Lambi.
Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, good night to you, Lambi, and the rest of the panel.
Nothing heard.
I'm listening.
Caller, are you still there?
Yes, we're hearing him. No, we're hearing the caller. We were hearing him, Lambi.
Hello?
We're hearing the caller, Lambi. You need to turn on your thing so you can hear him too.
Caller, please go ahead. We listen to you.
Yeah. Good night again to all. I am listening, and I would like to ask Mr. Blackman a question. Because he spoke about an enrollment officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that enrollment officer is a very significant person in that list to registration. And you mentioned because of that, then we're going to have a new list. I would like to know where are those enrollment officers will be? Are they only in Dominica, or will there be enrollment officers overseas? Because
that's a very important question. Okay. If my memory can I answer, mister? Can I answer?
By all means, yes.
If my memory serves me right, if you go on the regulations of the Parent Act of the Registration of Electors Act, it says under Section 3.1, there shall be the appointment of officers, and that is be done by the Commission. Enrollment officers to be appointed, and that's for the express purpose of one, verifying information as to whether one is qualified for to be confirmed. Two, the information for the issuance of the voter ID card. These are the two core fundamental functions that the law actually contemplates once it's actually enacted. Very transparent. So they're not appointed by Roger Scarrett or Levi Peters, the Attorney General, or even Blackmore, the Commission. Now, the college was a very important point. If I had met the qualification to register to vote, and I'm living overseas, and if we're talking about the international best practice right now, Mr. Gregor and Dr. Andre is in Canada, they tie your right to vote to citizenship. So there's no requirement to show yourself within the borders, within a stipulated period of time. They totally took out that mandate in law. So once you are a Canadian, your name has a right to remain on the list and you have a right to vote. The same applies in England recently, just 15 years. Why a small population like Dominica, with homogeneous communities, with a solidarity that is mechanical? If everybody knows each other, we want to incorporate things that are not relevant to our existence. Now, in St. Kitts, when they had this process, the government provided the personnel and resources to the various international centers to allow people to confirm the name on the list. We are saying no. Everybody has to come to Dominica.
One sec, Mr. Blackman. Lambi, did you want to take another call quickly?
Yes. Go ahead, please. Caller, please go ahead.
We're not hearing the caller, Lambi. You need to connect the caller to us.
Yeah, hold on. Go ahead, caller.
All right, we're not hearing the caller, so you'll have to sort that out so we can hear them, man. Because we're
Mr. Gregory, it's important for us to appreciate the law. And if we have issues with the law, let's point out the sections. And let's go back.
What I'd like to do, yes, I'd like us to do that. But I wanted to go back to Dr. Andre for him to respond to some of what you had said.
Yeah.
Then I will also want to, yes, but before I go to you, Dr. Andre, let's take a call. Lambi, go right here.
Caller, please go ahead.
Lambi.
Yes, go ahead.
Are you there with me, Lambi?
I'm hearing you, and we're all hearing you. Go ahead with your call.
Okay, thank you. I say love, life, healing, joy, gratitude, courage, and sacrifice. I am just saying, Lambi. Lambi, am I still on with you?
We're hearing you loud and clear.
Okay, blessings, Dr. Andre, Mr. Lincoln, and Sheridan, and everybody. Blessings.
Mr. Blackmore and Mr. Nicholas George.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Mr. Blackmore, you know, why the Prime Minister, who is not his responsibility to be directly involved in the whole process of electoral reform, and the commissioners seems to be exempted or sidelined. Why? Why the Prime Minister is so adamant or so involved in the whole process? I would want to say manipulation, but I would just say process. Because you, Mr. Blackmore, talk about respectful. Mr. G, you can tell me how many numbers of program you have had through the years, and I can't recall one being disrespectful. And the other thing, what about Dennis Byron recommendation? What about the OECS letter? Blackmore, can you please tell us what are all your concerns and what are you going to do about the OAS letter? What will be your response? I listened to Skerry talking about sovereignty and interference of foreign people and all of that. Why Dennis Byron, after $500,000 or over $500,000 was spent for his opinion, recommendations, or reform or whatever, and it was just shoved aside? Why? And Blackmore, why again is Kerry so involved in electoral reform and the commissioners being sidelined? Why? So it is very interesting, and what you have to say about the OAS concern about the madness that is taking place in Dominica. Thank you.
Mr. Blackmore, I will give you a moment to answer that. But before that, I just want to get Dr. Andre to make his contribution quickly, and then I will come back to you, Mr. Blackmore, so you can answer that and any other comment that you want to make.
Very quickly, Mr. Blackmore said in his presentation that we have to deal with the question of cleansing the voters list as adults. Two reminders, Mr. Blackmore. There are some adults in Antigua. In the early 200s, they cleansed their voters list, headed by another adult called Justin Simon, Dominican, in 3 months. And Antigua has significantly more people than Dominica. So this is the adult approach we're talking about. Secondly, in the last 1 or 2 election cycles, there are persons who are challenged names on the voters list. What did the Electoral Commission do? As in nothing. So this is why we do not place faith in your assertion that the Electoral Commission will do the right thing. It will not happen, and you know it, and we know it.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Blackmore, yes, one of the things that you mentioned, and I agree with, we need to really look at the actual laws that are tabled in Parliament.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you that the reason why we're here tonight talking to you about this is because we have actually looked at those laws, and we have some fundamental disagreements in some of those provisions. I mean, for example, the reason why we talk about the re-registration in Dominica is because we disagree with the approach that is being taken in the law there. And the whole question of the compliance of this notion of the ordinarily resident in Dominica, we think that that's a very strong point that needs to be looked at very seriously, because Dr. Andre was making the point that he's been out there for 40 years and he's still there, and people are telling me that their parents are dead, they're still on the list. So we need to do something about that. And the whole question of bribery and treating Mr. Blackmore, as Mr. Linton mentioned, some of the courts have looked at some of those things there. And I think we need to ensure that this does not, our law does no loopholes that allow that. And it's very important that whatever we do in terms of a reform must be clear that that is outlawed, that it really cannot be accepted. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood that.
Mr. Gregoire, let me just, I want to make an observation, and that is that based on what we have read in the proposed new Registration of Electors Act, which was introduced in the Parliament in December, That particular piece of legislation is seeking to establish a system for electing a government in Dominica that allows citizens who are living overseas, who are not ordinarily resident in Dominica, to choose representatives in the Parliament of Dominica for constituencies where they do not live and therefore cannot be represented. That new Registration of Electors Act bill is seeking to legitimize a system for electing government that allows citizens who are living overseas, who are not ordinarily resident in Dominica, to be paid to come home to vote to determine the results in constituencies where they do not live and therefore cannot be represented. And I want to emphasize the point that this right to vote that we keep talking about is only a right to vote for representation in the Parliament of Dominica. And it cannot be fair that if you don't live under the jurisdiction of the Parliament of Dominica, that you can be voting in elections, especially you can be paid to come to vote in elections for representation in that Parliament where you're out of the jurisdiction of the Parliament. It is not fair. And we cannot be talking about free and fair elections with a new process, with reforms that gives us a new process that do not take care of taints like these.
Right. So, Mr. Blackmore, I will come to you, but Mr. Lennox Linton mentioned TIDs, and I believe the CCJ also mentioned some TIDs, electoral system, and I wanted you to address some of those. But I wanted to, let's not forget that Nicholas George is here with us. Nicholas, we have not given you an opportunity. Can you take 5 minutes and maybe make a few comments on those laws that Mr. Blackman is referring to? And if you can comment on the specifics of some of those, then we can go back to Mr. Blackmore to get his reaction to that. I don't want to leave you out because you're here with us. Sorry, Mr. Blackmore. I wanted to bring in Mr. Nicholas George for a couple of minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gregoire. Good evening, especially to Honorable Raymond Blackmore, Dr. Andre, Honorable Lennox Linton, Sherwin Mitchell, our veteran, Mr. Charles, and citizens listening in Dominica and overseas. I've listened to Mr. Blackmore. I have a first challenge for Mr. Blackmore. That is whether he would join me in us writing up a proposal for a different political system than that which we have at the moment. Why do I say that? The system we have is too adversarial. It breeds negativity, hatred, and divisiveness and disunity in our community of 72,000 people. But we need to do something different. And all what the minister said there is based on an element of trust. We've been disappointed, we've been deceived, we've been lied to by all the officials that we have elected into our parliament. And we are comfortable with the political system that does that. There are implications and repercussions for the kind of political system that we now have, and we need to change it, Honorable Blackmore. You spoke about the law. It's interesting that you speak about it. I'm going to take one. Before these laws were presented in Parliament, the current House of Assembly Act and the current Registration of Electors Act, especially the Registration of Electors Act, empowered the Chief Elections Officer to issue ID cards, Section 19. The regulation, Section 15, said when that application was made through advocacy, the Attorney General, current Attorney General, said there were not enough specifications as to how to issue the cards. And therefore, he was vehemently opposed to that. Now, the new act is there, and he's comfortable with what is there. And as far as I'm concerned, what he has in the current act and what is there in the current bill that is before Parliament and what is there in the existing law is the same. Okay, it's the same. There's no specification there, so they're just there.
That is not true.
That is not true.
No, and the fact is, I'm saying, Mr. Gregoire, let us try to assist, even if the majority of the followers are not supporting the government, they have a right to do so, but they have a right to be told the truth. Now, that is why I have an issue with people speaking from a generalized perspective. You were talking about the voter ID card. I want to refer you to section 11.1 of the Registration of Electors proposed act. What does it say, Mr. George? And then you see the nexus between the parent act and section 13 of the regulation. That specifies, okay, and all the things that have to be done to give effect to that card. Section 11.1 says, Mr. George, before information, that a voter identification card shall be issued with the prescribed information to include a photo ID and other security features of the voter by the commission, Mr. George. And if you go to the regulation, section 13 of the regulation, it says that the card, it refers to the form in which it should take, the information to be contained on the card, the voter ID number, and then it speaks about after 10 years, that card shall expire and shall be surrendered to the commission, and the commission shall reissue a new card. What are you talking about? And that's why I'm saying that you have a responsibility, Mr. George, listen please. Listen please. You have a responsibility as the general secretary of a party to engage your followers and Dominicans alike in a dispassionate way and to speak to the specifics of the proposed measures. Because the proposed measures have the things that you guys are opposing.
Let's go to the specifics.
Okay. So I want you to go. If you want, I can go to. If you want, I have been for the laws clause by clause.
1 second.
If you want, I can go to the laws with you on one of my computers.
Here's what I make it
my business.
Here's what I want to do, Mr. Here's what I want to do, Mr. Blackmore. I want to go back to the specifics of that voter card. That card.
Yeah. Let's think about it.
Hold on. I just want to make sure that we get this specific, because you're saying the specifics that you refer to are different from what Mr. George is saying. So let's look at the specifics on what this law requires has to go on that ID card.
Yes.
And let us see if there's any difference between what the law now is saying and what other people on the panel would like to see on that card.
Okay. So if you do you have the regulation before you? Because I made reference to the Parent Act section 11.1.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
You have it? So we can go to the regulation and regulation 13, sir, and it gives you a detailed roadmap for the actual implementation of the voter ID card and the issue of security features, and with a facial image or picture, photograph with certain security features, which of course is biometrics. And the notion that biometrics should be given that one-dimensional connotation of fingerprints is flawed. My ears, the shape of my ears, that's biometric. My veins, biometric. My voice, biometric. The iris in your eyes, biometric. The cheeks in your face are biometrics. Fingerprint is a less contemporary biometric than facial recognition. So let us be, if we're talking, we have a vocation. We have to make it our vocation to educate the public. And my God, we're not doing that. We are putting politics in priority.
But no, let's not.
Let's also. Okay,
hold on, Mr. Blackmore. I don't want us to do this. We're not here for confrontation, as you said.
Okay. My apologies.
We're here for dialogue. So
fine.
That's why I asked you to read the law and see what specifics. I don't know whether Lennox or Dr. Andre have any difference of opinion on the specifics that are being required, as you've just mentioned, and what they have in mind to be placed on that card.
Yes.
No, but Sheridan Gregoire, according to the recommendations of the electoral reform consultant, Sir Dennis Byron, let me quote him here from his report. The introduction of voter identification cards to persons registered as electors supported with biometric data was considered one of the most important reforms by almost everyone. This was regarded as essential to eliminate or minimize a wide variety of fraudulent conduct at elections, including impersonation and multiple voting, end of quote. Now, from what we've read, the new Registration of Electors Act provides for ID cards to be used for voting with a voter registration number and facial recognition as the only biometric. One of the biometrics considered in the consultative process was fingerprinting. And we believe that to ensure the certainty of identity in all respects, the biometric of fingerprints must be used for voter registration and voting. Mr. Blackmore and the government says no, because if you're fingerprinting people as part of the voter registration process, it attaches some sort of criminality to voting. That's what the Prime Minister said. I mean, all around the world, and we talk about modernization, all around the world, voter registration systems are engaging the biometric of fingerprinting for certainty of identification. So yes, we have facial recognition, but it is the only biometric, and we're suggesting, since it's modernizing, let's bring in the fingerprints as well.
Okay, so Lennox, before I go to Dr. Andre for his comment, let me take a call from Lambi and then we'll get back to you, Mr. Blackmore. Go ahead, Lambi.
Caller, please go ahead. Caller, please go ahead with your call.
We're not hearing the caller, Lambi. You need to connect the caller.
He's there.
Ask him to speak a little louder.
Clem, speak louder, please. Speak louder. Yes. Louder, please. You're very low.
But Lambi, is your audio loud enough to hear him? Because I'm hearing him, but very faint. Make sure you turn him up so we can hear him.
Yeah, are you hearing me okay?
We're hearing you very well now. We're hearing you very clearly. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I was reluctant to call because I was thinking that I may get overly emotional.
Hold on one sec, Mr. Blackmore. Hold on one sec, Mr. Blackmore. Could you just turn off your mic for a minute because some of the noise is feeding back. Go ahead, caller. Go right ahead.
Yeah, when Mr. Blackmore talked about we're not educating the people, that was a trigger. That just triggered me that I had to call. Because, I want to take Mr. Blackmore to the head of the commission. We know certain things about that commission. We know the email of Tony Estefan. We've seen the pics of the commission. And we've seen the babu check that has been put on the mouth of the head of the commission. How can you have this commissioner and he the head of the chairman of the commission, and he has not said practically a word, and you come and say that we are not educating the people? The commissioner has not said a word. The head of the commission has not said a word in regard to educating the people. Not an iota. Have you heard it? I want to ask Mr. Blackmore, and I'm going to get off the phone because I don't want to get too emotional. If he believes that the head of that commission did an adequate job, even as much as said of one paragraph in regard to education. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, Dr. Andre, before I go to Mr. Blackmore, let me just ask you if you wanted to make a further comment on this whole question of the ID cards.
Yes, well, Mr. Blackmore is entitled to his view that we're not educating the people, we're politicizing this issue. But I guess he says that when looking at a mirror. But let me ask one question. We talk about fingerprints introducing an element of criminality in the process. Well, when you go to the USA and you're asked to present your fingerprint, what do you say to them? Gasso, you are introducing an element of criminality to me coming to the States? Do you tell them that? No, you are meek as a lamb. You fingerprint as requested by the US authorities and you enter the United States. So that argument has in fact, it has no validity whatsoever, to be quite frank with you. And Mr. Blackmore says, okay, we're not educating. Well, let me try to educate on one issue at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, Dominicans, those of you listening to the program, there is not a single mention of campaign finance reform in these proposed pieces of legislation. So I want to educate you on this one point. There's more. No mention whatsoever. And there's talk about observers from the OAS. The OAS has commented negatively on the absence of that type of reform in Dominica. CARICOM has, the Inter-American, whatever you call it, and so on, the organization, has also, and Mr. Linton made reference to the CCJ. So, Mr. Blackmore, education to you may mean a different thing to me. But as I said, if I'm wrong, I challenge you to challenge me that there is not a single mention of campaign finance reform in these 3 bills. In fact, I invite you to double the number of bills, just to see if, after all, you will find under some mattress campaign finance reform.
All right, so let me go to Mr. Blackmore.
Well, hold on, Sheridan Gregoire. Before you go to Mr. Blackmore, we skipped over, we jumped from the question of residence and so on, and confirmation of registration and that issue. We skipped on to we jumped on to the ID cards, but there's a matter I want Mr. Blackmore to address, and that is, I want him to confirm or deny that the legislation as it stands right now, for that's coming before the Parliament, is providing for confirmation of registration and not confirmation of eligibility to vote. Because eligibility to vote is based on residence. If you're not resident in Dominica, if you're no longer ordinarily resident in Dominica, according to the Constitution, you should not be eligible to vote in Dominica until you have returned to live indefinitely in the country. That is the expectation of the Constitution, which gives us the right to vote. What is being done with this revised legislation is to confirm registration. So if you were registered to vote in 1971 or 1960 or 1985, and you've been living overseas for the last 20, 30, or 40 years, once you have been registered, all that is required now is for you to have your registration confirmed. And that is easy because, yes, you're on the register of electors. Whether you've been living here for the last 20 years, doesn't matter. Once you come and you say that you're registered, then your name stays on the register. I'm saying in order to clean the list, it has to be a confirmation now at this point of whether the person is eligible to vote. And notice that what is required to be presented to the enrollment officer has nothing to do where the person now lives. So if the person is living in New York, or they're living in Timbuktu, or they're living in Thailand, that is not important for the enrollment officer. That's not important information as far as the law is concerned for the enrollment officer. All they want to know is that you were registered, and that's it. So you give your whatever other information you have to give. If it's they take your photograph, etc. But they're not concerned with where you're living now and where you have lived or have ordinarily resided for the last 10, 15, or 20 years. That is wrong. It contributes, it creates, it provides for an unfair election system where people who are not under the jurisdiction of the parliament that people are voting for representation in, they are the ones deciding the results of the election, especially in marginal constituencies where certain people pay for them to come home to vote. We have to deal with that, Mr. Blackmore.
Yeah, so Mr. Blackmore, let me give you an opportunity now to come feedback on some of those. You have to unmute your mic. Unmute your mic.
Well, very like if we look at the specific clauses and sections in the relevant pieces of proposed legislation, and Mr. Linton is again superimposing the Constitution relative to people's right to vote. The issue of residency requirement becomes important to get a name on the voters list, and it should not be seen as the same to somebody who has a right to vote. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, we cannot remain obstinate on everything. The fact is, you are concerned about a bloated list and dead people voting. Again, the law says, under Section 49, subsection 2, that within the confirmation period, that somebody who was on the voters list shall present himself and to apply for confirmation of his registration. That's what the law says, Mr. Linton. Section 49, subsection 3 says...
Mr. Blackmore, I didn't disagree. I didn't disagree.
Can I finish?
No, hold on. You will finish. Just let me make the point. I didn't disagree that the law is providing for registration. I'm saying that the law ought to be providing for confirmation of eligibility to vote.
But Mr. Linton, you have to be reasonable. You have to be
reasonable means what?
You are not being reasonable. I'll tell you why.
Let's let Mr.
I'm saying, can I say something? I'm speaking for myself now.
Yeah.
I take with a very serious degree of suspicion any government who wants to remove my name on the voters list without giving me a chance to due process. I'm alive. And strictly speaking, the reconfirmation of registration has an issue too, insofar as my right is concerned. But we want to compromise. We want to compromise. And Section 49, subsection 3 says, if me or anybody whose name is on the voters list fail to present his or herself to apply for reconfirmation, your name shall be deleted on the list. What more do you want? So which means, therefore, if you do not present yourself for the reconfirmation of your name on the list, it shall be deleted. You want to get to Rosa from Portsmouth, you can take a bus, you can also take a boat. You see, so I believe that we cannot remain obstinate on our position in a democracy. It doesn't work that way. Because if you're concerned about dead people voting, let me see a dead person show up to confirm his own name on the voters list.
Okay, so Mr.
Black, I'm certain, Mr. Gregor.
Yes.
A number of your own supporters.
Let's take a quick call.
Will be agreed.
Hold on.
To them,
let's take a quick call.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, let's take a quick call. Let me go right here.
Yeah.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead with your call.
Yeah, just quickly, Lambi, Sheridan, Mr. G, and everybody, well, let's all yourself. I'm asking again. I know I can remember one great man said, no law, no constitution. So it seems like it doesn't matter. Protocol, I don't like protocol either. You know, all of that have been said. I am asking Mr. Blackmore again, Mr. G, please, can you ask Mr. Blackmore to respond to me? I know I'm a legal caller, but why the recommendation of Dennis Byron was thrown in the garbage bin? I am asking that one, why is Skerrit so involved in the whole process of electoral reform? And why are you so hot and bothered about the OAS letter to all you pertaining to electoral reform? Can you please respond to those questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Blackmore, go right ahead. You can respond to that.
Again, I'm not sure how to start to answer to some of the aspersion raised by Blessings, except to say that the Prime Minister is the head of the executive, whether we like it or not. Except to say the executive who determines what goes to Parliament. The executive. It was so in Miss Charles' days. It was so in Edison James days, and it is so right now. Whether we like it or not, Roosevelt Skerrit is the Prime Minister of the country. And we have a responsibility to give him the respect, the whole of the office that respect. And if Mr. Linton is the Prime Minister, I'll give him the same respect. So I'm not going to cast aspersion or to respond to an aspersion. So that is my answer to Blessings. Now, a point was made.
He asked about an OAS letter.
But I'm saying the recommendation by Mr. Byron, the government, actually, with consultation of the commission, engaged Mr. Byron. There were some who burnt the recommendation. in the public view. And ironically, they're now calling for the same recommendation. And then we have taken on board in the proposed measures, in the proposed bill, most of the recommendation. A recommendation does not mean you have to take it. We also have consultation. And Mr. Linton made reference to the voter ID card and fingerprint being the only biometric. It's the passport, biometric. Dr. Andrew spoke about entering somebody's border. Bro, entering somebody's border is a privilege. It's not a right. And it is being done for security imperative. That's why they take a fingerprint. Okay, so the two are not the same. We are mixing apples and grapes.
No, but Mr. Blackmore, Mr. Blackmore,
my last point is that.
Hold on.
Mr. Gregor.
No,
Sorry.
I'll give you a chance to make all of the
points. Go ahead. My apologies. Go ahead.
Yeah, but just before you go on, in terms of the fingerprint, I think Mr. Byron recommended that could be one of those included. Dr. Andre is only making this the comment that the US allows it. You're not criminalized because you put your fingerprint on something. Is there any particular reason why that recommendation is not acceptable?
Okay. Let me not respond to Dr. Andre, if you permit me to do so. I think a better analogy could have been drawn by Dr. Andre to speak about the identification that cards that are needed and required in America. Only about 14 states have specific voter ID cards. In a number of the southern states, it is seen as suppression of the black vote, the minority. In Canada, you can vote with a current receipt with your address and your name on it in Canada with millions of people. Okay, so I'm not saying that we have to be careful that in our mind of reform that we are not suppressing the vote. And I'm saying in a country with homogeneous communities where everybody knows each other, what is the reason for imposing all those caveats on people, on voters? I'm not trying to understand it. When there has not been any case brought before any court where any dead person or anybody has impersonated anybody to vote. Those are the facts we have to evaluate. And when we're making discussion, not just to speak from our minds, cast aspersion, and backing and holding on to our own kind of cynical view about everything. If we're cynical, we're not going to solve problems.
Well, I agree with you. And this question of cynicism, it operates on all sides. So it's not like it's something that one side alone or one person. No, I want to go back to the question.
Before you go, if you permit me, since we're making reference to Dr. Byron's recommendation, there was a survey done by Dr. Byron concerning national ID, and as opposed to a specific voter ID card. 56% of the people polled said they were against a specific voter ID card. They were for driver's license, they were for passports. That's what the survey said. If we want to talk about the recommendation from Sir Byron, let us talk about that also. I've read the entire report.
No,
so we must not cherry pick.
No, let's talk about everything. Let's talk about everything, including some of the things that you don't seem to want to talk about.
Yeah, I want to talk about everything.
I'm not sure because I asked you a question earlier, and I'm hoping that you can try to address that.
Which one?
The question I had was on the same question of total re-registration in Dominica. I want you to tell me how, in fact, you see that is too burdensome or how that is really disenfranchises anybody. What is the problem with re-registration, total re-registration in Dominica?
Well, I'm saying to you, we have now before us a reconfirmation, which will achieve the same objective of cleansing the list. I do not believe, Mr. Gregor, that I, as a Dominican, have to remain 3 months in a specific address to have my name re-entered on the voter list. I should be given an opportunity in keeping with international best practices and the spirit of upholding my rights to vote, a chance to present myself or not. So it means, therefore, if I do not want my name to reappear in the list, I sit it out at my home. Because under Section 49, subsection 3 says, so, if you do not present yourself, your name shall be deleted. So I'm just trying to say to you, we are trying to achieve the same process, which I believe is more transparent and is less taxing, especially to the older demographic. And already,
But
you have
Mr.
to tell already your own supporters,
but,
are
Mr.
they're speaking to
Blackmore,
me. They are concerned about the reconfirmation.
Let's take another call from Lambi.
Yeah.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead with your call.
Hello, good evening to everybody on the panel.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm listening to the program. I like to say I'm a senior citizen and I want to be educated, okay? Now I want to ask Mr. Blackmore a question because I don't seem to understand, so he'll explain to me. Are you saying, Mr. Blackmore, that if we're talking about re-registration and we're saying we want a new registration, a total new registration. So are you saying if I'm living overseas for 20 years, okay, and my name is on that list, all right? Now you're saying I can come back to vote since I come within 12 months of thing to vote? Is that what you're saying?
I never said that.
Just now, Mr. Blackmore, follow up to that. If I'm living overseas for 20 years, okay, I'm not living here at all, I'm overseas. I come back, my name is on the list, I register. No, I re-register. I'm not paying taxes here, I'm not paying taxes. The government is in power. The government has no control over me living in the States. You understand what I'm saying? So how can I'm just asking the question. As I say, I want to be educated. How can I live in overseas for 20 years? Come down to vote. You put a government. You go back. The government is not in charge of you. Where you are on the other side, that government is in charge. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Okay, two things here. I never said that you can come back and vote. We are speaking about the new proposed bills. And I'm saying once the bills go into effect, insofar as confirmation is concerned, if you do not present yourself to have your name your registration confirmed, your name will be deleted, and in the next election, you will not be able to vote. There will be a clean list. Now, the issue about people living overseas for 20 years, the number of people living overseas who are connected to the country, and I'm not sure why you want to look at Dominica as though to say we operate in a vacuum, when in all the other countries in the world are moving away from placing any time limit for people living overseas. It used to be 15 years in Canada. It is now, once you're a citizen, you can vote. Once your name is on the voters list, you can vote. It used to be 15 years in England. United States, there's no mandate. You're getting your vote, your ballot by ballot. Those are the things we have to be talking about. And I notice nobody's making reference to some of the futuristic things that we have in the bill under the House of Assembly election bill. And if we're talking about level playing field, let us go and talk about access to the state-owned media on the section, what again? Section 50 of the House of Assembly bill. Let us talk about the electronic voting system on the section 51.1. Those are good things in the bills that we're not talking about.
Mr. Blackmore, before hold on, Lennox, hold on. Yeah. Before we go to that, let's take a call. Go ahead, Lambi.
I think, caller, please go ahead.
Yes, good night again, Lambi.
Good evening.
The rest of the panel. Mr. Blackmore started by saying, let's be respectful and speak the truth. And I really believe that would be the thing for the night. But somehow I feel like I am being disrespected. And I'm going to explain how. You know, to dismiss somebody is very much disrespectful. And I am saying that because Mr. Black not talking about the list, and we're going to have a new list. How are we going to have a new list when you're saying that people should be given the chance to reconfirm who overseas or we're going to come and reconfirm? When it can be easily done by just throwing out that old list and let everybody re-register. So simple. Everybody re-register. And I would like to ask Mr. Blackman another question. As far I want to be educated too. As far as I knew, I might be wrong, that the Electoral Commission should be an independent body, and it is the one who is in charge of the elections activity. I believe it is also in charge of the one who set the process and the laws for election. I recall some time ago that when Richard Charles was the chief commissioner, or however they call it, they were about to do a reform. And Anthony Astafans wrote to Mr. Scary and said they cannot allow that because it will suppress his winning legacy. And I want to know why today Mr. Scary take it on his own to do his own thing on that election thing and not the Electoral Commission. Mr. Blackmore, please try not to deceive me and tell me the truth. Is the Electoral Commission the one who's supposed to be doing what you and Mr. Scary is doing now?
One of the wonderful features of the proposed measures is the strengthening of the Electoral Commission. And insofar as the supervision of election is concerned, if you were to go under the House of Assembly election bill, you see how the independence of the commission insofar as the supervision and being the sole custodian of the elections, you can see that for yourself. You go under the House, under the Electoral Commission proposed bill, and you can see how the bill is giving more responsibility to the commission and also giving further credence to the Constitution that actually ensure the creation of the commission. So I believe that good can be had, and I'm sorry to the caller if I appear to have been disrespectful. That was not my intention. Good can be had if we sit down and willing to have the discussion and look at the sections that are good. You see, one of the things I want to say, Mr. Gregory, when I used to be in Canada, I used to follow football, and my team was Buffalo Bills, because it was close to Brampton area. And the coach said at one time when they were losing, and there was a question about the critics. He said, "What do you expect from a critic? Most critics have no specialization. The role is to criticize." For there are some people, it doesn't matter what explanation you come out with. If they're cynical, if they want to be critical, so you have a nice car, it's well painted, they're looking for a little speck. I am not so, I may appear to be so, I'm not so. Because I understand, and the party that's an offer understands the importance of electoral reform and the importance for us to settle down and to get to the fundamentals of developing the country. Because electoral reform has been a vexing issue among political parties. It is not the staple item on the agenda of the ordinary Dominican. And we have to dispose of it in a sane and civilized way and embracing each other as we do it now. And we cannot remain obstinate. Look at that. We're talking about level playing field. We spoke about access to the own media. Okay? You go under the House Assembly Bill, Act, sorry, on the Section 50, GIS, DBS, it can be print, electronic, owned by the state. It's the commission who set the parameters, and also not only political parties, but independent candidates shall have equal access to GIS and DBS radio. And all that have been proposed.
No, but Mr. Blackmore, with all due respect, right? What I was saying earlier when I made my initial remarks, I prefer to see direct access. I do not think it should be necessary to go to the Electoral Commission for any political party to go directly to any media house to negotiate to buy airtime there. I do not think that should be necessary. Just saying that is one of the areas I depart from the that yeah. Other
Well,
areas, hold on.
I see your point. I tell you why. Well, I see your point, but at the same time, the minister is responsible for GIS and DBS radio. So if you want to have somebody as a referee, I want to believe the same commission that we are saying should be given more autonomy should be the referee, and they're the ones who will be in the person of the candidates and the officials within the state-owned media to determine that there is equal access to all political parties, including independent candidates.
No, but I just think that's another level of bureaucracy and time wasting regulation that you don't need, because if any political party goes to DBS, they can work with the management. The board sets policy for the DBS already. They can work with the manager or the sales department. Say, okay, we want to buy so much airtime, and they decide whether they have the time available once they're paying their money. I'm not sure that you need another bureaucracy where an electoral commission might take a week or two to decide, deliberate, and then decide whether or not they should allow DBS to do this. And then by that time, the person's requirement has gone. They no longer need that. That's what I'm saying. Just eliminate that level of bureaucracy. That's what I'm saying. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, I still believe that we need to resolve this issue of re-registration, because I do not see where it harms anybody at all to have total re-registration in Dominica. Even looking for
Sheridan, give me a 1 point on this access to media matter there, because what was proposed, early in the play was access to state-owned media. It evolved during the consultation, and probably before that, into access to media, period, because the taint we're dealing with is skewed or unfair media coverage that disproportionately favors one candidate or one party over others, which would be influencing public perception and voting behavior. Now that is addressed in the new House of Assembly Elections Act, with provisions that obligate state-owned media only state-owned media, to ensure that political parties and independent candidates participating in elections have equal access during the campaign period. This is a provision that should cover all media, and there must be penalties for failure to comply with the rules. We are modernizing, but yet in modernization, we're saying, okay, we're bringing it this now. It took us how many years to bring the legislation? We're bringing it now, but we're only going to deal with state media. We're not going to obligate the other media systems to be fair and just with political parties and candidates, independent candidates elections. So Mr. Blackmore keeps talking about the good things that there are in the legislation, and he's not talking about the omissions, the deliberate omissions, because you have, for example, and I guess he'll comment on this later, the omission of the campaign finance regulations in the House of Assembly Elections Act as proposed by the consultant Sir Dennis Byron. So what that means is that there's going to be no restriction on election campaign spending and no regulation of sources of election campaign funding. And when we're talking no regulation of election campaign financing, we mean money has the controlling influence in our political system, such that the elections we're having every 5 years are determined and or purchased by the big money interests or by criminal enterprises. One word, Sheridan, quickly, back to this business of voter identification card, because it didn't just fall from the sky. It's been with us for a long time. The consultant in his report says, quote, the commission has been able to commit to the use of a card for authentic voter identification strengthened by biometric data technology. The leader of the opposition and his team, in consultation with me, supported this development. At the time, it was proposed that there would be a voter identification card and that the biometric methodology will be based on fingerprinting. During my consultation with the government, they also supported the use of biometric data to strengthen the process of personal identification, but proposed that the use of facial recognition was sufficient and that to include the requirement of fingerprinting might generate pushback, especially from those sections of the community which associated the taking of fingerprints with criminal investigation. But here's what the consultant says, quote, I am not persuaded that there would be widespread resistance to fingerprinting. Many countries require fingerprinting as part of the application process for visas, and Caribbean nationals readily provide their fingerprints to foreign countries as part of that process. Further, research shows that for decades, fingerprints have been a basic standard type of biometric information collected by many countries as part of their voter registration process. End of quote.
The thing is, Mr. Gregoire, I mean, I heard Mr. Linton again, and it reminds me of growing up. You have a khaki pants with a patch, and you're using polyester to patch it. They don't work. The fact of the matter is, applying for a visa to enter somebody else's border cannot be seen as the same as somebody who wants to vote, who has a right to vote.
Mr. Gregoire, did I read anything there? Hold on, Mr. Gregoire, did I read anything there from Lennox Linton, or did I quote the electoral reform consultant of the government of Dominica?
Yeah, but I'm responding.
So why are you telling me? Why are you talking to me foolishness about khaki pants and polyester pants and patches and so on?
Yeah,
what's that arrant nonsense about?
Okay, listen. I tell you why. Because applying for a visa to enter somebody's border is a privilege awarded to you. That's at the discretion of the state. They can impose any condition on you. It's not the same, Mr. Linton. And that is the way the recommendation was seen.
So
likewise,
your criticism there really is leveled at Mr. Sir Dennis Byron, because Mr. Linton was only quoting Sir Dennis Byron.
No. I'm saying recommendations were made. You have to be reasonable and prudent and accepting recommendation. And we are saying you make a reference to biometrics. What is the definition of biometrics?
Well, here's my question. What is the objection to fingerprinting? Really, what is the problem with fingerprinting?
We have before you, Mr. Gregoire, a proposed ID card with facial recognition.
No, I was just asking, what is the objection to fingerprinting, really? Is that a big deal that we have to, argue over that, fingerprinting?
Well, we had consultation. You saw the consultation. Dominicans en masse were not even in support of a voter ID card.
No, but what is the problem with it? That's what I'm asking. Is there?
So who are you seeking to govern with a proposed measure? Even with the same report, Mr. Byron is saying in his report that the majority of people polled were not for a specific voter ID card. Let us not conveniently reference the recommendations. That's all I'm saying,
No,
we are saying that notwithstanding.
No, but Mr. Blackmore,
we're coming to a compromise. We're saying that notwithstanding, that we're proposing a voter ID card, but with facial recognition with certain security features. That's biometric. So what is wrong with that?
But what is wrong with the fingerprinting? That's what I'm asking. You see, nothing wrong with the biometric, but what is wrong with it?
What is wrong with the fingerprinting is that the government of Roosevelt Skerrit says it will criminalize voting in Dominica. End of quote.
Let's take a call from Lambi. Lambi, let's take a call.
Let's be serious. We all know, and we all live in Dominica.
Go ahead, Lambi. Let's take a call.
We all know.
Just 1 second, please.
No, listen,
Lambi,
please.
take a call.
I was an investigator. Before I went to university, when I came back, the only time we fingerprinted people when they were arrested or when they were going for applying for a green card. There's a connotation. There's a stereotype, whether you like it or not, that is assigned to fingerprints. Whether you like it or not, we all know that. Let us be serious about it. Mr. Nicholas George is on the platform also.
I don't know that. I don't know that. I don't think you can say all that. Dr. Andre,
well, you don't know that now. But when you and I were together, you knew that.
Dr. Andre, you wanted to make a comment on this? You're muted. You have to unmute Dr. Andre.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to try to focus on education because that's what Mr. Blackburn wants, so I'm going to give it to him. I hope he can stomach it. Let me ask Mr. Blackburn one simple question. A leader or leaders who make the following comments, I'm going to ask you if for 1 minute, and you're speaking to the Dominican people now because you want to educate them, if they have any interest in free and fair elections in Dominica. There will be blood, Mr. Blackmore, on the streets if you vote for UWP. Go through hot water if they knock on your door. We don't need an opposition. Nous parlez, Monsieur ici. Go take him away, Mr. Blackmore. These are the people you say you are speaking with a straight face, have any interest in electoral reform, Mr. Blackmore. You can be an investigator for 100 years. These utterances lead to one inescapable conclusion. The folk have no interest in fair and free election. Let me ask you this. Campaign finance reform. Tell me one Caribbean island that have sought to change their laws that did not institute some type of campaign finance reform. And let me ask you this again. Tell us why you don't want fingerprints if you're interested in free and fair elections. It's not a criminal thing because you want to have loopholes so people can cheat. No campaign finance reform because Tom Crook from Afghanistan can feed money to you folk. And you talk about Dominica being a homogenous country. Who's buying the passports, Nagasa? You tell me, people from Whitaker? Huh? Who are buying these foreign passports? You tell us. And another thing, you keep mentioning Canada. So you have to read the case, eh? The essence of that decision, which I debated your Attorney General some time ago, was that the external diasporic vote is so insignificant that it doesn't justify the prohibition of 5 years abroad to prevent people from voting. That is the essence of the decision. Where you have a country, you are paying people to come to Dominica, Mr. Blackburn. I know you don't know him, but you're an investigator, but I'm trying to tell you. You are directing them where to vote, Mr. Blackmore, not you personally, but the people that you associate with. If you can got free and fair elections, Mr. Blackmore,
Dr. Andre, one of the reasons why I came here tonight, I thought we were going to have a serious discussion.
I'm not serious. I'm not serious. I'm making jokes.
No, yeah, but we're not involved in the reciting of court. Okay, the fact of the matter is,
I mean, the Prime Minister is court when he made the conferences. They will be blood on the street. That's court. That's how you insult Dominicans, Mr. Blackmore.
You're a guy. You're a very bright guy. You have written. I've read the books, and let's try to. You can be a voice of reason because you have the expertise, you have the intellect, you have the reason to do. But making those kind of comments not going to add any value to what we're seeking to discuss here tonight. In a political platform, during an election campaign, you have hyperbole, you have all these kind of expressions. And I do not believe that we need to we have a discussion to insert that into a serious discussion. And I'm not saying on the issue of campaign reform, I agree with something. Of course, the law is a process, it's organic, it has to evolve, it will change with time. And then we have to be guided by our cultural reality and to make sure that the kind of formula we have insofar as campaign reform is concerned suits our cultural and social reality. Now, some of the countries reference in the Caribbean. I've read the campaign reform, campaign financing laws, very, very minimal. That speaks to expenditure, etc., etc., and they're not even being used. And written into so far as recommendations are concerned in terms of a maximum of $5 million, etc. One of the things I would like to ask you, because you have to also understand that when we speak about choosing a formula that is compatible with our social reality, are we going to actually publish the names of people who actually provide funding or support to the political candidates? Or there's also the issue about no foreign interests. Those are issues that you can look at. And you publish people's name who have given you funded in a small society. What are some of the implications on those people? You know what I'm saying? So we have to. This is something we have to sit down because the law is evolving, and of course, and there will be campaign reform. But I mean, and I do not believe we can just use campaign reform to stall a process of starting to move the process forward insofar as electoral reform is concerned.
No, but Mr.
In whose benefit you are moving the process forward, Mr. Blackmore? Tell us in whose interest are you moving that process forward?
I'm saying to you, Dr. Andre, all the measures except one, access to the state of media, electronic voting system, futuristic, of course, but it's contained in the law. All right? Cleansing of the list. And this goes on voter ID card. All those things that you have in the bill. But the manner in which we're discussing it, you don't want to discuss it. You want to discuss it in a convenient way for political expedience. I'm not there for that.
No, but Mr. Blackmore, come on, that's not true. I think.
I'm not talking about you, Mr. Blackmore.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is this. I mean, let's be fair. You see the kind of dialogue that we're having there now? That is something that we need to have on a daily basis as civil individuals among one another. Now, here's what I want to say to you. I noticed, for example, there has been a lot of talk, even the CCJ and other, there have been these jurisdictions that have been commenting on this question of bribery and treating in elections. But I would have liked to have seen, I'm telling you what I would like to see in that law, clearly an outlawing of bribery and treating, so that, as our AG likes to, in the avoidance of any doubt whatsoever. So anybody who doing that know they're going to pay a fine for that, or they'll take a jail for bribery and treating. I would like to see that specifically mentioned, covered in the law. And then secondly, the point I'm trying to make, which is related to that, I mean, how can you just say we're not doing campaign finance reform at all? I mean, you paid a man so much money, you know, who's a real qualified guy, and he made some recommendations. Shouldn't we at least look at those recommendations, see what aspects of it? Because our sister islands like Antigua and some of these other countries, Jamaica, they all have it, you know. Can't we just and make that? Hold on. What I want to say is this. Why couldn't we just take we've been discussing electoral reform for 20 years, you know. I mean, are you trying to tell me in all of that time we could not make a decision about campaign finance reform, what we want? Because the question is not just of who is giving, you know, but we have to have accountability in this thing. What is it? So you don't think at all that we should have any campaign finance reform in this?
I think during the consultation, and you heard the Prime Minister also, there was never mention of not wanting campaign reform. We say it's something, it's a process that's emerging. Now, you made reference to bribery and treating, and that you'd like people to go to jail for that. But If we were to go, I believe, on the section 60, subsection 1 of the House of Assembly Elections Bill, can we just take it from A to G and look at it, look at the various components of the definition as to where we disagree? And my understanding, of course, on section 61 that speaks to treating, and I believe creates an offense, and there's a sentence, according to my recollection, of $5,000 for 6 months. That's what the law says. And you simply say this now that you would like to see somebody fined or go to jail. But the current law speaks to.
What I'm really saying is that there must be penalty.
Can we refer to section 60?
Hold on, Mr. Black.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is that I would like to see it clearly defined in the law that it outlaws bribery and treating. I even quoted our AG. Our AG like to say, in the avoidance of doubt, to remove any doubt whatsoever in the minds of anybody. Let's just clearly specify the thing in there. Bribery and treating is not in it. And then what I'm saying also is that you cannot tell me that we're serious about this thing if we're not going to consider campaign finance laws at all in our reform.
I don't know why you're doing that, but I'm saying I want to agree with you, and we said that we're going to get there. It's a process, and then the law will get there. But you have to admit that we are making significant steps in reforming our laws that no other government has even contemplated doing, even when they offered financing to do so. Okay, and we are saying that we are giving the country electoral reform. We have a responsibility. We cannot go into a next election without electoral reform, and that is why I believe we should make it our duty and to ensure that we give people enough time to go through the processes so far as cleansing the list is concerned. But I am trying to get for you section 60, I believe, that speaks to bribery under the House of Assembly election bills. I think that is a discussion that we need to have. And listen, please. And you have a very broad and very comprehensive, far-reaching definition from A to G and on bribery. And it says that a person is guilty of an offense that the person commits treating. It says that specifically. It says the same thing for bribery. And then you can go to jail for 6 months, so you can be fined $5,000. It's specified in the law. So I would really advise us to read the proposed measures and read the definition.
Okay. So I have read the proposed legislation, and I want to be advised, where in the legislation does it say that the payment or the promise of payment to a voter for his traveling expenses on the condition, expressed or implied, that he would vote for a particular candidate is bribery? Where is that provided for in the A to G or F or C that you referenced there a while ago? And where is it provided for specifically that the payment of entertainment, this high-priced entertainment that we see that emerged in our election campaigns over the last 15 to 20 years, all sorts of international artists at hundreds of thousands of dollars, where is it provided that this is an election offense and it should not happen? Because remember, we have taken these matters to court, we have gone to court with these matters.
And lose.
And no. When we bring the evidence before the court, listen to me now. You're going to listen to me now. When we bring the evidence before the court, they go to the DPP to null it pros. We filed a criminal case against 15 members of the Dominica Labour Party for the 2014 elections. Because remember, the Commonwealth Observer Mission came here and observed that there were multiple instances of treating and bribery, including the transportation of electors to the island to vote.
Okay.
So now we filed a criminal action. The High Court decided that it was not properly before the court, and we appealed. The appeal court said the matter was properly before the court, and these 15 members of the government should face trial in the magistrate's court for the criminal offense of treating. They went to the CCJ. The CCJ upheld the decision of the appeal court and ordered the chief magistrate to set a date for the trial to commence. At that point, the government attorneys went to the DPP and prevailed on her to null pros or to quash the case, which the CCJ found, our highest court found no problem with. But the government ministers decide they can use the system in order to avoid facing criminal charges for the election offense of treating. So, so that tells us that the law needs to be clarified because, you know, Mr. Blackmore, interestingly, very interestingly, this matter of the bribery and treating, the provisions against that in the new House of Assembly Elections Act, I'm saying to you, they do not cover the payment of ANC transportation for voters living overseas. And I want you to show me where that is, because I believe, and we believe, that that is bribery. So that this has been part, this bringing of overseas voters into Dominica, paying the travel expenses and so on, has been a significant part of the Labour Party getting results of elections in their favor, especially in marginal constituencies in Dominica. So that, to the point that Irvin Andre was making earlier about the impact of the overseas vote on the Dominica elections, it is nowhere near what it is in the, it is far, far, far higher. That impact is far greater in Dominica than it is, I would believe, anywhere else in the world. There is no other part of the world, in the democratic world, where people are paid, where these huge sums of money are being expended on people to come in to vote, people who ordinarily would not have decided to take their own money and come in to vote. But they found a source of payment for their airline tickets, their ferry tickets, and so they come in droves to vote in marginal constituencies. That has happened election after election in Dominica in the past 3 to 4 cycles. And you're telling me that that is fair? You're telling me that a system for elections that maintains that or seeks to protect it is a fair system, will give us a fair result? No, the people of Dominica cannot accept that. And they must stand resolutely against it.
Okay, Dr. Andre, hold on. Let's take a quick call before we go to the blog. Let me go ahead.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Thanks for taking my call.
Hello.
I was very reluctant in terms of deciding whether I wanted to listen to that program or not. But I decided for fairness and balance, we have 2 opposing views. So I decided to listen, and I must say I'm very disappointed because in my mind, the whole question of electoral reform is designed to remove any unfair advantage of any particular political party or individual who goes up as an independent candidate. So reform, to me, the objective is to get an even playing field so that whoever participates has the same type of condition. And I must say that I expected much more in terms of even Mr. Blackmore. He talked about court. He's the one who introduced the whole question of khaki pants. And before somebody says something, he has to cast aspersion. Mr. Linton, the same old, same old. I expected a higher level of debate from him and a certain level of respect. I'm not saying that he was disrespectful, but he came across as being disrespectful. Now, I'm not a great student of history, but we recall when Baldwin Spencer, being in government, saw the necessity for electoral reform, decided to go ahead and have electoral reform. He lost the next general election. And these are the people in my mind I consider as statesmen. Even if I have to reform the law, and in reforming the law, it means that I lose the next general election on an even playing field. That is being statesmanlike. But to think if you tweak the law in a particular way to make it fair for all, the fear of
losing political reins of power is too great to have an electoral reform that will be fair for all. This thing started over how many years? 16 or more years. We've been talking about electoral reform. It is clear that there are not honest brokers at the table of wanting us to have reform. And people are more focused on holding on to the reins of political power as opposed to having free and fair elections. We can do better than that. I expected much more because I think Mr. Blackman is a very articulate guy. He's very passionate and confident, but I mean, let us try to be fair for all. It is not only about your party, Mr. Blackmore. It is about every citizen. You cannot have a bloated list of 74,000 people and even want to be feeling good about that and talking about this thing should just be wiped out and re-register people and finish with that. It makes us a laughing stock. We think to the ordinary man that we are it. The other people are laughing at us, a nation with more registered voters than citizens. And we're proud of that. We can do better than that. Come on. Thank you and good night.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your comments. Lambi, you want to take another call? Go ahead.
Go ahead with your call.
Hello, good evening, gentlemen. I think it's a wonderful program. In a democracy, two sides will meet and discuss fairly on behalf of the people. I have seen in Barbados where people from the Barbados Labour Party who in government and the Democratic Labour Party met on the same program, minister and shadow minister, and they speak in a way that the Barbadian people can understand. I think we deserve that ourselves in Dominica, where our minister and also the Minister of National Security, so the Minister of Government Security is national security. That means you have a responsibility for the entire nation. And we're talking for all these years electoral reform. And I think the government has contaminated that process in the sense that you had Mayor Motley when she was in the opposition, read a report. We haven't seen that. We have published that. We had the OS CARICOM coming around doing a consultancy. When they presented the report, the Attorney General came on the air and said it was too close to election. When we had a few more years to go for election, and it would be too expensive. We hired Dennis Byron, we paid him over $700,000 to the report, and that report is paid. The Prime Minister called stakeholders at the State House to receive the report, and then what happened is we had another group doing something else that the government presented. So another thing though, the Prime Minister went and said with the consultation they were having to create division and disunity in the country, that the opposition want government to take money from the treasury to fund during the campaign. I think it's so, so dishonest and so that we have gone. And there is nowhere in the design recommendation, anybody else, including the opposition, admit that submission. I don't know why these people use that. Are they using that just because they want their supporters to hate those who are supporting them? That you can't govern a country like that and feel that you can create a disunity. I will give you an example. I heard Sheldon spoke about the radio station. The last election in St. Kitts, they St. Kitts had reform, and the Governor General took over the reform and ensured that the government was not involved as they are. All they have to do is provide the resources, the Ministry of Finance, for the Commission to do the work, and they will participate as a political party like any other party in the process. And I heard the Governor General saying, we want to ensure that the opposition has a fair say at the table, and the OAS paid for their consultants, their electoral reform. And then when the last election in St. Kitts, then the Douglas party lost 2 elections before, the government came in, were doing quite well, but they went disunity among themselves when they felt there was a coalition government, and then the Labour Party came back into government. But in that election, the national radio station manager came on the air, and he said, directly from the board and the Minister of the Broadcasting, each political party will have equal time on the radio station, and if you want, you pay for additional time. And so on. The manager did that. The electoral commission will do that. So why we can't have a fair thing to run? I'm sure if Mr. Blackmore was in opposition now and was presenting what is being presented and he was a true statesman, a true man, of reason, Christianity, and justice, we would oppose it. And what we're saying, though, we want to work together. I want to ask Mr. Blackmore tonight, what is the resistance that the Prime Minister had to engage with the electoral coalition to discuss this matter when we made over 30 recommendations, short-term, medium to long-term, and then we zeroed down into 5, campaign finance, voter registration, and so forth. Mr. Blackmore spoke about your intention for the country and because your privilege. What about those who are selling passports to, who are citizens? They have to apply their fingerprint to the application, you know. So are the criminals coming here with our passport to the business in Dominica? I mean, let's come on, let's be realistic, let's be fair, let's be honest. And so at the end of the day, your legacy in public life will tell you whether you serve the country well or you serve yourself in your party well. Thank you so much.
Yes, Mr. Blackmore, thank you for that caller. Mr. Blackmore, I wanted to ask you something too, on this matter of, well, whatever loopholes are there in this voting thing. We know that we have quite a number of economic citizens out there, right? I really would like to get your opinion as to what you think, because you're a man of the law. What do you think we should do about that? I mean, should we allow, or should the law allow economic citizens to vote in our elections in Dominica? What do you?
You're a guy. I mean, I knew before. We have respect for too. Why are we doing that? The people who have obtained citizenship under this program largely do not live in Dominica. Have no intention of living in Dominica, and they cannot vote in our election. For them to vote in our election, they have to come and reside. Listen.
What I'm asking you for your. No, hold on. I ask you a specific question. In your personal opinion.
But I answer the question, sir.
No, but I wanted to know not what your opinion is. Do you think?
No, we're talking about the law. We're talking about the law. I'm not there to talk about. It's not a knee-jerk response to a question. Talking about a rational, sensible response. Talking about economic citizens cannot vote in an election unless they come to reside continuously for 3 months in a particular address to register to vote. So the notion that if you're a Dominican, holding a Dominican passport, living overseas, you can just come en masse to vote in our election is flawed, and it is fundamentally misplaced. Okay, and it should not be repeated.
No, because it's not. But hold on, Mr. Blackmore. You're making an assumption there, which I did not make. I was just asking you for your opinion as to whether you think this economic citizen should be able to vote at all. That's all I was asking.
So, we have another discussion. There are two statements. One of facts, one of opinion. 2 + 2 = 4. There's no opinion in that. I'm saying that Dominicans living overseas who have not registered to vote cannot vote in our election. And for them to qualify to register to vote, they have to live continuously for 3 months in a particular address in Dominica.
Okay, I'm with you.
And even if, another step, a number of the callers call and say about, even if you were to register to vote 2 days before the new laws come into effect, insofar as the reconfirmation of registration is concerned, you still have to go back and confirm your name. If you don't do that, it will be deleted. It shall be deleted. Section 49, subsection 3 say, shall be deleted. So basically, going forward, once you go to Parliament and enact the laws, especially as it refers to the registration of electors that fix reconfirmation, you must go and confirm your name, even if you register to vote a week before that law wasn't enacted. Otherwise, it shall be deleted. So effectively, Mr. Gregor, what I'm trying to say, we are getting a cleansed list. Now, going back to Mr. Linton's point about bribery, the definition of bribery. Now, bribery largely, Dr. Andres, they would know that it remains largely a common law offense, except under the trafficking of drugs, where you intend to bribe a police officer. It is now reproducing our election laws, where it's qualified by way of an offense under election laws. But the intention now for bribery to surpass You have to prove somebody corruptly induced somebody to do something that person would not have normally done. And insofar as our elections are concerned, when you look at the definition, the intention, if you induce somebody to vote or to refrain from voting, and it stipulates the instances how you can do that: a gift, money, a loan, a contract, procurement or something, and the law is well detailed. Now, Mr. Linton make reference to specifically stating in the law the issue of providing transportation. Now, for example, you have theft, the definition of theft. If you dishonestly misappropriate something from somebody with the intention of permanently depriving the person of it, you cannot put in the theft act definition if you steal a cow or if you steal a battery. You have a generalized statement definition, and then you have to have the elements to prove the substance of the charge. You get my point? So I'm not sure how you want to put. You want to legislate to put that the provision of transportation. Where's the nexus between inducing somebody corruptly, and also you have to also appreciate for bribery to surpass, the person who is bribed is also culpable. The person who is bribed is also culpable. So it's not a fishing expedition you're going to undertake in the court to just come and have a list and not properly pleading in an affidavit before the court and just make an accusation. Where elements to prove the case? And so I think
Mr. Blackmore, with due respect, you spoke about when I mentioned we had taken matters to court, you jumped in and said, and you lost. Yeah, okay. We have taken matters to court. We have taken matters to court where we have pleaded that the Dominica Labour Party has been involved in bringing people from overseas, payment of transportation expense from people overseas to vote. And the Labour parties, through its attorneys in the court, have represented that, yes, we are bringing in people from outside to vote. We are paying for them, but these are our voters. And there's no offense in paying for your voters. We are saying that the payment of transportation expenses for voters, especially overseas, on the condition, whether it's expressed or whether it's that particular person is going to vote for a particular candidate, is bribery. And we would like to see in the legislation, because this is a reading and a learning that we have from Halsbury's Laws of England, and we would like to see for the avoidance of doubt clause that makes it clear that that particular action with which the Labour Party has been involved for a number of election cycles now is in fact bribery. So the law is clear where that is concerned. We cannot be talking about reforming an electoral system and ignoring the taints on the process like this one, which has surfaced and has impacted the results of elections over and over again. Not in a fair way, not in a fair way at all, and yet not want to do anything about it, but claim that we have a system in place for free and fair elections. It is not.
No, I'm saying to you,
Mr. Blackmore, before you go, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that, but I wanted to get Dr. Andrews trying to make an input on this whole question of bribery and treating, and you mentioned something about the courts and so on. I want to give Dr. Andrew a chance to respond, so you can respond to both of them. Irving, you're muted.
Let me say that it's only in Dominica, in the Eastern Caribbean, you have one government who imports en masse voters by the dozens or hundreds to come to Dominica, not at Christmas, not at Jump Up, not in August, but on the eve of an election, to come with one specific purpose, to vote. But it's not just to vote, and Mr. Blackmore is missing the point, deliberately in my view, to vote in a particular constituency. And this is not Andre just talking out of his mouth. There's affidavit evidence, there's evidence on Facebook where people have shown and provided proof that this is what's happening. Let me ask Mr. Blackmore, because he wants us to educate the listeners, Mr. Gregoire. Mr. Blackmore, tell me, in which other Caribbean island is that happening? I'm giving you an opportunity to educate the people. Tell me.
Well, the thing is, I know that voting is a private enterprise. And you vote, no one knows who you're voting for. If you're able to show me a nexus between providing transportation for somebody and that person is being induced to vote in a particular way, in which they're normally voting, then you're talking about something else.
No, that is your interpretation of bribery, but you're just wrong.
Listen, we're talking about case law. There's case law that speaks to that. So I'm not going to get myself entangled in a discussion with something that has been disposed of by the court.
That's what you say, but you're dead wrong.
No, the court, by way of case law, I can get it for you right now. If you give it to me, I can read it for you. Dispose of that matter. And then you want us to reproduce it in a definition of bribery and cheating, which I've never seen in any modern definition of a particular offense. I made reference to theft. I've never seen that in the definition of theft, that stealing a car is theft. And it specifically, so it speaks about misappropriating dishonestly property belonging to another, and with the intention of permanently depriving the person of it. Now, if it's a car, then it has to be stated in the charge. And that is what I'm a practical person.
Yes,
so that's what I'm saying about when I use the word educate. Not say if I sound condescending, my apologies. I believe if you look at the laws, look at the sections, and look at how relevant it is to our situation. But when it comes to we're speaking from our head and just throwing stuff there and there.
We're not. No, but with due respect, Mr. Gregoire, we're not doing that. We're not throwing stuff here and there. We're talking specifically to the provisions of the bills that are supposed to be enacted, that are intended to be enacted in the first quarter of 2025, with respect to the House of Assembly Elections Act. And so far, it concerns bribery.
Okay, stop there. Let's stop there. Let's go on section 60 and look at bribery.
No, hold on. Before we go there, let me ask. But I asked you a question. I asked you a question earlier, and you did not answer it. I asked you, where is it provided for in this House of Assembly Elections Act, section 60 or 61, wherever it is, that the payment of transportation expenses for a voter on the condition expressed or implied that he or she will vote for a particular candidate is bribery? Where do we see that? For the avoidance of doubt of what bribery is in the context of our elections, in the context of practices that have impacted the outcome of elections in Dominica over the past 3-4 election cycles. So, Mr. Blackmore, do you agree with this payment of transportation expenses for voters living overseas to come home to vote at election time in Dominica? Do you agree with that?
The fact is, facilitating somebody by way of transportation is not bribery.
Okay, so that now is consistent with the views of your party represented in court by your attorneys, that yes, we are bringing people by the thousands, by the plane loads, by the ferry loads to come into Dominica to vote, but these are our supporters, and so we have the right to bring them home.
Can I ask a question? You ran several times to Marigot constituency. You have never provided transportation within the constituency for people to vote?
I've given people rights. Yeah, people have rode on my car.
When you give them a ride,
When I take them from Pokase to Marigot or from Marigot to town, I don't charge them. I don't charge them any money.
But they were facilitated, isn't that so?
Yeah, they were facilitated. Yes, of course, they were facilitated. But you're saying. No, hold on. I want to be clear what you're saying tonight. So because you're speaking to the people of Dominica, you're saying that the payment of transportation expenses for people living overseas to come to vote in Dominica is okay as far as your party is concerned.
Once you cannot prove, and there is no evidence that they were induced to vote in a particular way, they will not have no money voting. And if you go to the definition, provision is made for that. That's why I'm asking you that whether you have provided bus transportation for people to vote in your constituency where you're very strong, and whether you know where the people voted, and whether you did that knowing that the people are your supporters.
Mr. Blackmore, the expenditure of millions of dollars, nobody knows where it comes from, for the Labour Party to bring people from overseas to vote, people who normally would not have voted. Now, listen to me, in 2022, the election of the United Workers' Party did not contest. Where were the plane loads and the boat loads of people that were coming in to vote paid for by the Labour Party? They were non-existent. Nobody came because the Labour Party had no challenge. When the Labour Party had a challenge in 2019 and in 2014 and in 2009, plane loads and boat loads, ferry loads of people came in, paid for by millions of dollars. God alone knows where it came from. Some people say it came from the sale of passports. But wherever it came from, it was done. These are facts. 2 + 2 = 4. The Labour Party, and you're not denying it tonight, is spending millions of dollars every election to bring people from living overseas to vote in elections in Dominica to influence the results. And you're trying to find a way around that. As we are seeing now with the way the legislation is set up to go before Parliament, why can't you have a for the avoidance of doubt clause for that to prevent it from happening? Because bribery and cheating are election offenses. But as we evolve, as we go on, we must be able to clarify exactly what we mean by these terms. And you're hopscotching all around it, but you're not coming to the point that this particular act of bribery needs to be clarified and defined for electoral reform in 2025 in Dominica.
But I don't
interject.
But bribery is, Mr. Linton. You don't want to listen. You keep on just being obstinate on your point that you want to raise.
I've been listening, and I would like to make my point, Mr. Blackmore, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Here's what you said a couple of minutes ago. There is no evidence of anyone being induced. Mr. Blackmore, again, with the greatest of respect, you were flat out wrong. A few years ago, it was played on Facebook. A prospective voter who was being recruited by an agent in Miami to receive past travel money to come to Dominica to vote. And the agent was telling this girl, and it was taped, was make sure. This is a labor right. You're recruiting to go to Dominica to vote for the Labour Party. So, Mr. Glasgow, you said you're an investigator, so I don't know, you need a refresher course. There is ample evidence that this is the only reason why people are receiving money to come to vote, giving money. Some of them, they come from Guadeloupe with the little Tululu crabs still attached to their pants just to vote for the Labour Party. And if you're suggesting they're being paid to come to Dominica to vote for anybody they want, Mr. Blackmore, we're not wet behind the ears. Give us a little credit, Nagaso. A little intelligence. Huh?
No, the thing is that...
You don't believe that. Nobody listening to you will believe it.
Representative made, I mean, to Tululu, and then is not being disrespectful. But when I spoke about Cathy Pants and I draw the analogy, and use a metaphor.
It's a decent, hard-working crab in Portsmouth.
Yes. But I'm not saying again, we're trying to discuss a matter there. And we have the material issue before us there, a well-defined in law, and we are refusing to show any regard for what is actually stipulated in the proposed measure.
But and I would like to let me tell you, No, I disagree with you completely. We're not disregarding anything. What I said to you before is that we have read those same laws that you have read, and we think, and we, sorry?
If you read, okay, you read section 60? Section 60?
Hold on, Mr. Blackmore. I mean, try not to insult my intelligence too.
Yeah.
I told you I read the laws. And all you don't think Miss Dr. Andy read them? You don't think Linton read? You think you're the only person who read these laws?
If you have read them, and which I know you guys have done, bright people, the Dr. Andy would not have been where he is if you were not a guy of intellect and reason. Let's not kid ourselves. We have different political views. You get my point?
Yes, but you seem to be saying
I looked at a tape of Mr. Linton when he was, I think, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, making a presentation. It was masterful. Somebody cannot do that if the person doesn't have a certain degree of sophistication.
No, but the point is, Mr. Block. Let me tell you this.
Let us be consistent. Let us be consistent.
No, but here's what I want to say to you.
You cannot be in opposition and want to get everything you want.
But it's not a matter of what the opposition want. It's not a matter of the Labour Party want, what the UWP want or Freedom want. Is what is the best practices for electoral system.
Let's not. If we talk about best practices,
hold on, please. I mean, we cannot look at this thing from point of view of what Lennox, Linton want or Labour want or Freedom want. No, that's not what she should do. The reason why you engage a man of the illustrious legal jurisprudence, what do you call it? This man, you paid how much money for? Because you recognize that this man could make a major contribution in that dialogue. And he did, and he made recommendations. We've totally disregarded some of what he said. And then we're now talking about who interprets what.
That's not true.
You mean, did you include campaign financing in what?
You piggy banking. But
Mr. Gregoire, before Mr. Blackmore tonight, elsewhere in the public space, the Prime Minister has clearly indicated that this is a negotiation. This is a give and take. You have to give and take. So I don't know what they're giving, and I don't know what they're taking. I know what they're leaving out of the legislation and what they're not dealing with, which will give us effective, comprehensive electoral reform for free and fair elections. We want free and fair elections. They have reduced it to a bargain now. You're in some kind of bargain with them. Give me that, I'll give you that. And we're not going to touch anything to do with the overseas voting or payment for people to come in to vote from overseas. We're not going to deal with campaign financing, but we will allow ID cards with facial recognition only, not fingerprints. And we're not going to touch this business of having people confirm their eligibility to vote as opposed to confirm their registration on the voters list, because we want to maintain maximum numbers in our pool of overseas votes that we're using every election cycle to determine the results of elections in Dominica for people who are living in Dominica and who are under the jurisdiction of the parliament for which they are voting and for where they're seeking representation. When you look at the overall construct, Mr. Gregoire, it is not fair. It is not a fair system. What we're looking for is free and fair elections in Dominica. And what is being proposed under this new set of laws to come into effect in this quarter of 2025 will not deliver free and fair election, will not facilitate free and fair elections, and the Dominican people must forcefully resist it.
Now, Mr. Blackmore, here's what I wanted to say, right? I have absolutely no interest in what Labour want, or what Freedom want, or what UPP want, or UWP want. I have no interest in that. What we want is proper electoral laws, right? Best practices. That's what we really want, to have free and fair election on a level playing field. That is all we should be looking for. I mean, that's nothing to do with which this person wants and that person wants. So whenever you see I make those contributions that I make, is in that way I'm making them. I have no interest in what any political party wants. And so when it comes to campaign finance reform, we study that and we look at a lot of different countries, what they've had, and they all have something. We should have something too. That's what I'm saying. I mean, how can we be going into election? I remember one of the reports, so I think that's Dennis Byron, who you had hired. He made a reference to some $27 million that was spent in 1 year by one political party. I mean, come on, are you trying to tell me that we should not have any accountability for this? If you have big dark money comes and influences an election, isn't that the reason that they're going to influence whatever government comes out of there? They might influence that government against the best interests of the people of the state. So we have to have accountability. That's what I'm saying. That has nothing to do with any political party's interest. And we should all look at it that way. Level playing field is what we should be looking for. And that is why when I say re-registration, totally registered, that is what I'm talking about. When I say we should have campaign finance reform, that is what I'm talking about. When you say, well, why do we want to leave out fingerprints? For example, is there any real good reason to leave out fingerprinting? There's no reason to include it. In other words, make the finger secure, just include what needs to be included. Why leave out and cherry pick, leave out certain things? That's the point I'm trying to make. You see what I'm coming from? Now, I want you to understand something else, Mr. Blackwell.
But
no, it's not anything elaborate I'm going to say. Just 1 second.
With your permission.
No, 1 second. Hold on. Just give me 1 second. I want to tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you're here with us tonight doing what you're doing. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm genuine about that. I highly appreciate the fact that you're here. And I wish the Attorney General came on this show as well some time ago, probably over a year ago. We highly appreciated his contribution there. I wish more people would do what you're doing, because then you get a dialogue going. Because listen, we're all Dominicans, and we want to be able to work together to develop what is best for Dominica. So I appreciate the fact that you're here. Go ahead.
Yeah, a point of correction. You made reference to Sir Barron's report, and reference was made to the political party and spending $27 million. You would appreciate also that Mr. Barron met with the opposite side. I don't think it's fair to say that he said that. He was basically reporting what was said to him, like a bet, right? And that in itself should not be a recommendation, strictly speaking. But what I'm saying further, right? We have to be careful what we're saying, because what causes a party to win an election is a political platform or lack thereof. I have been hearing about $27 million have been spent in campaign. When we first ran, Vince, the Prime Minister, Ian Pinard, and myself, we all took loans after the election, personal loans. You can ask Dr. Dublin, was my manager. Crispin Gregor and Afi Martin were the ones responsible for giving us money, managing. They gave us a check. I got a check of $2,500. We never paid in Rose to Rose. Again in 2005. So I've been hearing people talking about this kind of bet and this kind of stuff. And notwithstanding the fact that Labour Party had no money in 2000, I decided to run 3 weeks before the election and left my job, which was a madness in retrospect. Because Mr. Stella Strad, may so rest in peace, the chairman of the Police Service Commission, called me tonight and tell me to take back my letter that had been promoted. 2005. Okay, my PA system was bought for me by old man Mr. P.H. Williams. Workers' Party had plenty of money from overseas and the private sector in Dominica. We had no money, zero. What Rosie had was mouth, his tongue. So the notion that that money alone by itself causes you to win an election, your platform, your ability to do hard work, to sweat, and to deal with the matters that are responsive to the needs of the people, and giving the people the appreciation that you are on their side, not they on your side, those are the fundamentals that cause you to win an election. So I've been hearing a lot of stuff about billions of dollars being spent. And people believe in those things. Somebody went to my wife and said, I got $707,000. We're sensing it. And she said to them, what? You know, and we're making up stories and stories and stories. I never got any money to run for an election. Before and now.
No, Mr. Blackmore, let me tell you,
no, we have been doing these things.
No,
and casting aspersion and saying things about the Prime Minister, indicting him.
No,
but when we have the money.
Wait a minute.
Indicting him for what?
Hold on, Lennox. Hold on, Lennox. Hold on. Mr. Blackmore, I don't understand what you're saying there. I don't think I said anything about aspersions on Prime Minister anybody. I said a report from Mr. Dennis Byron mentioned that. That's all I've said. What are you talking about? Hold on, please.
In the way you say it's not true.
Please. Come on.
The opposition who said that today.
Well, whoever said that, I didn't say that. All right, so you can't just come and put that in there as though I said.
He's thrown Dennis Byron under the bus to say Dennis Byron was reporting Beth.
No. Secondly, no, Mr. Blackmore, if you say that is what you spent, I would not doubt you if you said that is what happened in 2000. I have no doubts. But Dr. Andre, you wanted to comment on this?
With the greatest of respect, Mr. Blackmore has his facts incorrect. The suggestion that Rosie had no money in 2000 is, I'm putting it as nicely as I can, inconsistent with the evidence. Let me help Mr. Blackmore jog his memory, because let's not any selective amnesia tonight. 2 junior ministers were paid to run, to contest on the Labour Party ticket. One UW, you're not going to trip me on this, my friend. You're not going to sell me this kind of cocoa macaque. One UWP senator, who had just contested and won, was bought hook, line, and sinker to cross the floor. So don't come and talk about Labour Party was broke and so on. Rosie didn't have money. All this talk. This is totally inconsistent with the facts. Rosie has confirmed that. Close associates of Rosie confirmed that. Family members have also confirmed that. So you are incorrect that Labour Party was broke when they contested in 2000.
Dr. Andre, we talk about 2000 election.
Yes.
And that I've laid on the table remain. I was using that to strengthen the argument that platforms and standing for the people, those are the elements that cause the winning election. And when I say that I don't think it's right to try to say that Sir Byron said something when what he was doing was reporting what was said to him. I don't think, and then you want to turn it around to say, and I'm throwing him under the bus. I'm not saying I don't think it's right.
You said Rosie just talked and produced no money. That's what you said. I didn't say that.
I was referring to Mr. Gregor's point about $27 million, and I was saying that was what was said to him.
How much did you spend in that election campaign?
I don't think it's fair to say that the man said that.
How much did you spend?
What's that?
It wasn't 27 million. What was it? 26 million or 24 million? How many millions were spent? Because from what we saw in the budget, $6 million was going to be spent on air tickets and so on in the 2009 election.
It could have been less than what you spent, Lennox.
Oh, okay. All right. Not a chance.
But Mr. Blackmore, really, I want to just say this, that I'm happy that we're having this conversation. I mean, sometimes conversations can, swing a little bit here and there, but I'm happy that you really agreed to come and let's discuss. And I think this is the kind of thing that should be done. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you this. I've been saying this for the longest while. I think there should be debates. For example, political leaders and candidates should have debates. Just you see, that's what we're discussing now. I mean, when was the last time we had a debate in Dominica? I mean, shouldn't we get into the culture of having debates? We used to have them before, All of a sudden, we strain away from that, so we're not even dialoguing with each other anymore. Why couldn't we do?
When I told my wife,
let's take a call from Lam. One sec. Let's take a call from Lambi. Lambi, go right ahead.
Caller, please, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lambert. You know, I'm listening to Mr. Blackmore. Mr. Blackmore, you know, it's difficult to just ignore the history and have a discussion. When you were asked how much was spent to prosecute the opposition in Parliament, allowed by the Speaker, you refused to answer the question. I thought that was not very nice of you. That when you were asked that question in Parliament, you should have answered that question. That is our business to know how much was spent prosecuting the opposition. And I found it very shameful that you didn't answer that question. And as a result of that, all what you're saying tonight is clouded by that issue in my brain. I don't trust you, frankly, because of that. You see? And it's the same with your prime minister. He has told us so many untruths. It would be difficult to even talk to him about any subject right now because I have seen his record of untruth and I've lost trust in him. Enough said.
Well, the thing is that my children trust me.
Let's take another call. Lambi, go right here. Let's take a call.
Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, I hit to call twice, but I just want to see. I know for a fact, Mr. Reuben Blackmore cannot deny that the Labour Party paid for persons overseas to come to vote. There's a guy who they saw in St. Thomas, and when he came down, they found out he voted against the Labour Party. And you know what happened? They let him down, you know. He had to fly all the way back to St. Thomas, you know. So we have to be, and what I find that is so dishonest in how we operate our politics in this country these days is that we're afraid to represent the truth, the facts. And I suspect what is really entangling the Labour Party is that they engage themselves to a certain level of hate. In other words, I listened to a discussion, and Prime Minister was in that discussion, the head of government. And so we wrote to him as ERC. And he didn't recognize that the ERC is a mixture of different people, you know. And we had said so. You know what he said? They are all UWP. What is wrong about UWP? I mean, it's a party, you're a party, we're a party, we compete, we discuss, we debate, and we put the best proposal forward. Reuben said he ran in 2000 with money. I may agree with that, but he lost in 2000. He lost, I lost. He ran in 2005, I supported him, he won, and so forth. Because if I had gone on my own and we had worked together, the same result would happen and people would have won. So the Labour Party can say they came into government by virtue of the Freedom Party support. And even when the Freedom Party supported them, they won 10 seats. 10 seats, so they didn't have enough to form a government and so forth. But people have seen the pattern of election. And I will tell you something, you know. Rosie Douglas made so in place guy early. He meant well. Pierre Charles got today I was seeing somebody today, the Prime Minister is going to get the most blows, tongue lashing down against Pierre Charles. But he meant well. But since this gentleman came into government, Roosevelt scared, he have divided the country. And when people saw the pattern of the election, the big billboards and the big bands, you know, they had a band could not fit in St. Joe, you know, they bring out another band on stage. It was so big, I didn't really get that. It could not fit in St. Joe. So you had money to do all of these things. When we ran election in the 80s, people pay their bosses, pay by the t-shirt, good or thing. Nowadays, you tell you know, we went to a place for a meeting, I don't call the place name, and they say, so many, somebody lives on the Palestine resort. That is how the country has come. And unless we can change that and get a different thing, and Mr. Gregor said he complimented Reuben for being there. I support him on that because the fact is we should not be afraid to discuss. And I think DBS, Kyrie, Q should be open for this discussion. But I think, my God, let us not take it as if like UWP versus UWP or Freedom versus this. It's a Dominican thing, and the more we can dialogue, you know, what would have been nice if we had dialogue and come out of the Parliament and all of us close ranks and say, hooray, something good is happening. I was denied, as a former member of Parliament, a member of the CPA, Congress Parliamentary Association, was denied to enter Dominica Parliament. I had no gun on me. I had no tear gas on me. I had no rum in my system. I was going to Parliament. Police said I could enter. One guy said, I know your face, you know, I explained to him, he said, well, our instruction not to let you allowed attend. You think that is a nice thing in a country, and I'm sure if Mr. Blackmore is in opposition and you get those treatment, you will either leave the country or shout out about it. That's where we ask, and we need to get out from there. And Mr. Blackmore, please try to help us get it from there. If the Prime Minister is running this thing wrong, people have resigned when nonsense is happening. But in this country, I don't know what has people just tagged into this whole thing, and the satanic thing that is really affecting the country, and we cannot see beyond just a hate for labor, for workers, a hate for this and a hate for that. That needs to stop in 2025. Thank you so much. I will call again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. Go ahead. Mr. Blackmore. Go ahead.
John Sebastian, good evening to you. John Sebastian, I have to have his record straight. In 1996, I came down. My best friend, one of my best friends, still one of my best friends, Earl Williams. When I arrived in Dominica, he told me, I told him not to come down. I paid my passage, and I came down to vote for Bosso in the by-election. So much respect myself, organized the first debate among Roy Shillingford, Julian Prevost, and John Sebastian. All right? When I ran 3 weeks before the election, I lost by 107 votes. And John Sebastian got 707 votes. I got 1,000 plus something. Prevost got 1,300 something votes. When I ran, I won. John Sebastian ran in 2009. Wanted me to lose the election. He got 54 votes. Okay? And let's get the record straight. So I was an overseas voter when I came out to vote for him in the by-election. The other issue that I want to talk about here tonight, because I think that we look at the various laws and we're talking about trying to establish a level playing field. But what I was trying to do, and it was to look at some of the proposals that we have in the intended laws, and as we seek to get that playing field level, as the opposition and other dissenting voices have been asking for. And I would have liked to have seen us, and even wanted to call it a call and say they have lost trust in me. It has not trust in me. My children trust me. And my wife could not have believed, Mr. Gregoire, that I was coming here tonight and to speak with you guys. Because I want to say to you that I have never once even thought of raising man and my children or my wife or have any encounter with any woman in my life whatsoever. And I was persecuted. But through prayer, I survived. And that's why I'm here tonight. And there are a number of people here tonight who still keep on saying things about me about these things, which I have never done in my life. And I have no respect for any man who will think of raising his hand on a woman. I've been against that all my life, even as a minister, standing and chairing a number of meetings to pass laws to deal with people who are vulnerable. So I know that I understand I don't hold any hate against anybody. And I was responding specifically to Bosso. And you may have a different view of the Prime Minister. But the notion that, but somehow, the Prime Minister, in my view, okay, is the true testament of somebody realizing the God-given dream. A man was raised by his auntie, and to have gotten to where he is now is an example all young people, young men ought to follow. That doesn't mean you have to agree with his politics, but his character. He said something about his character. And I believe in character. And I think we're missing those wonderful stories about people. And so I decided to come on this program, and I thought about it. My elders came to the store, they watched me. They could not have believed. You see? But if I was someone who was holding things on people, I mean, I'm not being here tonight. But I believe that this Dominican experiment can work. But it can only work if all of us put it first. The Labour Party is not going to be in office forever. It's a fact. What is important is the legacy that we leave behind. And many of us could have been out there too. I could be out there too. I chose to come back to my country. We took loans from the aid bank, went to university, came back, and paid it like a mortgage, and stayed back in our country to protect that little rock. And nobody going to tell me that I'm not a patriot. My wife stayed back in Dominica because of me. You're going to tell me about patriot. And I will always stand for my country. I always stand for law and order.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this.
I'm not going to throw the Prime Minister under the bus.
No.
Unless somebody, but I don't feel it is right for us to turn a blind eyes on the issues that we need to be speaking about. And this obsession, okay, over a personality, I mean, is something that we have to dispose of.
No, Mr. Blackmore, you don't try to do this because there's only one person who came and spoke about Mr. Scurry. That was Mr. Boston, right? I mean, none of us. I know. You know, don't generalize and see, because as I said to you, the fact of the matter is I appreciate you a lot for just being here tonight, and the fact that you're willing to sit and debate. That is what I'm suggesting that we should all be doing. I am not interested, I say, in what UWP want or what Freedom want or Labour or the UPP want. What we want is what is best for Dominica. That is why I'm here. I believe in democracy. I believe in free and fair, because I think elections have consequences. Because elections matter, they have results for people's lives. I'm very happy that we're here. We see, we've been doing so well that time has kind of gone and run out on us, 2 hours, gone into 3 hours. So don't feel bad about this. What I want to say is this, that what you're doing there is commendable. You came here and sat with us and you discussed. I'm sure you did not expect everybody to agree with everything you're saying.
No, not at all.
That's what debates are all about. So, I mean, we have to agree to do that. But I want you to know that I appreciate you for being here tonight. Now, we have to come down to an end to this. And so I want to start to wind down. And I want to tell you something, and Mr. Blackmon, that is genuine from me. I noticed you called Matt a few times and you gave you time on the radio, and I was very happy they did that. You came here tonight and we had a dialogue. I'm happy you did. I want you to know that anytime at all, this station is available to you. You can come here at any time and have discussions like that. I appreciate it. And I want you to know that is genuine from my heart. Are you with me? That is what I'm saying to you tonight. So don't think that anything anybody says, this intention coming here tonight was not for anybody to bash you or to bash any individual. It was for us to discuss this business of electoral reform, and we have views. So, I mean, the laws are there. I mean, the government has gone into Parliament and had the first reading. There'll be a couple more readings coming up. I think that gives us some time to keep discussing and keep dialoguing and hope that some things will prevail that most people can agree on and what is best for Dominica. So I appreciate what we had there tonight. So we're going to go around the table, Mr. Blackmon, get some closing up remarks. But I'm going to give you the last word, because I think you're my special guest here tonight. So I want to start off maybe with Nicholas George, if he's still with us. I don't know if you're there with us, Nicholas. We didn't give you much time at all. If you're there, let me know.
Well, yes, I'm there, Mr. Chair, and
okay,
I'm glad that the minister remembered my name and so on. It almost appeared that it would be better if I was not on the program. But out of courtesy to the minister, I listened. I am ending with the same manner that I started. I would like the minister, if he would want to join me in crafting, designing a political system that is unique to Dominica. That is to say, we must remove all the vileness that is in there, all the deception, all the criticisms, all the divisiveness, all the hatred, because once that is perpetuated at the top, it filters down into the society below, and that is where we get decadence. And we think it's something else that is going to solve the problem down there. So let us design a political system that allows us to do that. He remonstrated with Dr. Andre for making remarks about what the Prime Minister had said. He rubbished it. But when lesser statements were made by the opposition, everybody is charged for incitement. So that is not that cannot be justice. And on the issue of electoral reform, Mr. Blackmore, I hear you. But my problem is one of trust. And all your expositions on the law and what the law says, I heard you. The laws are there, and they have been applied discriminatively subjectively, as far as I'm concerned, because you are in the executive, so you do what you want. And the last thing I want to talk about that really bothers me, well, two things. You brought Prime Minister Dick Michel here to insult me as a Dominican who benefited from, and you know that policemen from Dominica served in Grenada to establish democratic principles in Grenada that Dick Michel benefited from. And then he came here and is trying to deprive me of my right to advocate for it. And guess what? On the 16th of December, sir, when Dominicans were saying to the government that we need electoral reform, the Barbados Coast Guard silently berthed in our port. We up to now, we do not know how many officers, military and police were on board to suppress us. We don't know, but they were there. Mr. Blackmore, like Mr. Gregoire, thank you for coming on the program. Thank you for coming on the program. But I really and truly would want to see us. And the last thing, let me just say that. We have written the Prime Minister, and from the United Workers' Party standpoint, we've written the Prime Minister, and we are asking now to have a dialogue with the Prime Minister, a technical team, just what you have been enunciating there, a technical team set up by the Prime Minister through the Attorney General's office and from the opposition to discuss the areas, the very small areas, and you would have noticed that there are 3 bills, but we didn't talk on every provision on the bill. There are certain areas, and I'm taking the opportunity tonight to ask you whether you can impress upon the Prime Minister to set up a technical team before the second reading to thrash out the manner that you were talking there, the areas that are disparate, and see if we can arrive at consensus before we go to Parliament for the second and third reading. Thank you, sir.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Lennox Linton, you want to make your closing remarks?
Yeah, well, Sheridan, I noticed we've been live for 3 hours, 6 minutes and 31 seconds. That's a long time. And I don't know what it means starting the year like this on radio for the first time this year and spending all of that time in one single program. But it was a good discussion. I want to thank you for inviting me. I want to thank Mr. Blackmore for being here, and Mr. Nicholas George, Dr. Andre Lambie, Sheridan, and other members of the Q family. Always remember that under Mr. Blackmore's watch as National Security Minister, I am an accused offender of the law in Dominica, on bail for $200,000 for an offense that everybody else is on bail for $50,000 and $75,000. But my bail is $200,000. I wish Mr. Blackmore would pay the same kind of attention to that injustice that he's paying to other perceptions of injustice, other things that he feels are unjust within the criminal justice system under his watch as National Security Minister. I also was in court yesterday. We were dealing there with, the court was dealing with the matters filed in respect of the Citizenship by Investment program and the management of it. I'm making these closing comments in the context of this statement earlier that elections have consequences, and unfair elections have particularly brutal consequences because you end up with governments that do what they want with no regard or no respect for the people, especially those that they don't like. And so we went to court in a matter where we are questioning the privatization of public money, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars from the sale of Dominican passports that have simply been unaccounted for. And we're looking for accounting, especially under the so-called housing option to access citizenship. And the government, while we are out there raising funds to pay our attorneys, the government has hired 2 senior counsel. They have Rishi Das, recently appointed senior counsel, and they have the long-standing senior counsel, Anthony Astafan, on this case, representing them, where we have claimed before the court that they have mismanaged the citizenship by investment program, and the citizens of the country need redress. You know what they're before the court with these two highly priced senior counsel doing? Arguing that the court has no jurisdiction to hear the matter of the privatization of public funds under the CBI program. The court has no jurisdiction in the matter, and so they want the matter struck out. The court has agreed, Mr. Gregoire and other members of the panel, the court has agreed that this challenge to jurisdiction will be isolated, prioritized, and dealt with first and foremost, because of course, depending on how it is determined, it could be dispositive of the entire case. And so they want the strikeout, but down the road that will happen. But first of all, in February, 24th of February, there'll be the hearing of the challenge to the jurisdiction of the court to deal with the privatization of citizenship by investment funds, the placement of those funds into private hands. And then you have the strikeout. They also want to strike out the claim we have filed seeking to have a determination, seeking to have a leader of the opposition appointed by the president, consistent with her constitutional responsibilities. They want that struck out as well. And so both the strikeout application and the substantive matter will be heard on the 10th of March. What I detected, though, and again on this question of election of consequences, the government obviously feels that it has the right to do whatever it pleases. And all of that seems to be consistent with this no law, no constitution dictum that emerged in our elections. It emerged in elections some time ago. No law, no constitution can basically prevent me from doing what I'm doing what I want to do. And so we see that being visited upon us over and over and over again. And even now, in these matters before the court, almost as though they own the courts and they must determine in the courts what happened. Nobody else seems to be able to have any case that they can bring before the court. Everything that somebody else brings must be struck out. However flimsy their grounds are, it doesn't matter. They just want to struck out because only they know what must come before their court of justice. So I would like to see this electoral reform process, especially in terms of the new legislation to go before the parliament, really address serious, comprehensive reform that delivers a free and fair election for the people of Dominica. And I just want to close with something that I like to refer to. It comes from a judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice who really provided some wise counsel as we are accepting this collective responsibility to ensure free and fair elections with integrity as the backbone of our democracy in Dominica. In that judgment of the of July 22nd, there is a paragraph there that says, without free and fair elections, the value of the creation and the maintenance of and respect for lawfully constituted authority would be fatally undermined. The consequences of such a denial that the reflection on Caribbean history demonstrates include loss of legitimacy, public unrest, and even revolt. In contemporary terms, free and fair elections are so fundamental to the democratic way of life that without it, the very legitimacy and sovereignty of the constitutional state is brought into question. Our constitutional state is now in question, and we would like to remove the question marks by ensuring that what comes out of this process with the legislation to go before Parliament before the end of this quarter will clear the way for free and fair elections, such that we will no longer need to be questioning the validity, the legitimacy, and the sovereignty of the constitutional state. And there will be no loss of legitimacy, there will be no public unrest, there will be no revolt in Dominica, because people are setting their face resolutely for free and fair elections in their country, our Commonwealth of Dominica. Gentlemen, thank you very much. People of Dominica, I love you. Thank you very much, always.
Thanks a lot, Lennox, for this brief closing remarks. Sorry, Dr. Andre, I'm going to leave you for last because you're my co-host, and I usually have. So I'm going to give I'm going to give Minister Blackmore some time to have his final closing remarks, because as I said, I want to close by saying this. I really appreciate the fact that Mr. Blackmore is here, and Q95 is open to him at any time. And I've noticed that Mark has already started that trend with him. But Mr. Blackmore, as I go to you for closing remarks, a couple of things that I noted in our discussion here tonight that I wanted to just mention, so you can maybe comment on them as you close. But one or two of them I did not get a chance to talk about, but I noticed something that you came out very forcefully about, this question of no bail. You came out forceful. So if you choose to comment on that, you can. It's up to you. I'll leave it up to you. It's not something that you're bound to on this matter for bail that is, consuming everybody's attention now. And then, of course, the fact that we have no opposition leader in Parliament now, but then we're going to have debates in Parliament. But if you're going to have a debate with 19 people on one side and 2 on the other side, who are not maybe even talking to each other, it's difficult to have a very vibrant debate if you want to sit and saying about matters like the laws when you go to committee stage and so on, when you go into, table the second reading. In terms of very strong debates, 19 to 2, as you know, you're not going to give you much of a debate. So we have to do that kind of dialogue here now before we go into that there, so that we can try to inform our government as much as possible as what we'd like to see. As I said, there are many things in these laws that are okay, but there are a few areas that there's some disagreement with. We should really try to iron out those things before we go in there and table them for the second and third. Then this question of, I think a recommendation came from Nicholas George, which I think is a good one. The Electoral Reform Coalition has been making some efforts for quite some time. It would be very good if there was a little technical team set up by the government and the people in the ARC to try to iron out some of those things that you're pointing out in those laws there that there may be disagreements on. It does not mean that that team would agree on everything and come out with one voice, but at least it gives an opportunity for some dialogue. That might be something that you might want to take up with your team in there. It might prove very, very useful if that could be done. Then Mr. Linton tried to talk about this question of the people coming together and expressing their views. I noticed that people came together and expressed their views on this no bail thing, and I understand that the judge has recused himself. I'm not sure if it is as a consequence of that, but that may have in some way, brought that to the attention of the powers that be, and maybe people felt that the judge might want to recuse himself, and I understand that he did. But the point is, I remember our recent outgoing, our recent president. He's a chap I followed very closely over the years, and one of the things that he always said, something, when people come together in mass protests, there's no such thing as a legal or illegal protest. There's only a successful and unsuccessful protest. In this case, I would say this small protest, like say these people, there was some success in getting at least the judge to recuse himself, and let us see what comes afterwards. But the justice will prevail. The law will take its course. But I know your position on that question of bail because you stated that very clearly. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity, Mr. Blackmore, to make your closing remarks, but just to let you know that I appreciated the fact that you were here tonight with us.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gregor. Thank you to Mr. Linton and Mr. George and Dr. Andre for having me here tonight. I want to just end by saying that the important measures by way of the proposed law have a lot of system and process. And if what is contained in every individual proposed measure will achieve that goal ultimately. And
hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Somebody's mic is open, and I really wish they would just mute the mic so you don't have that kind of interruption and background noise while you're talking. Okay.
Okay,
so,
fine.
Okay.
And I believe that there was consultation with interest groups, stakeholders, and which of course in a more refined and finalized version of the proposed measures. We have as a country and as a government to lead and to ensure that we dispose of this vexing matter and to start to give attention to the issues that are relevant to the people's everyday survival. Cost of living, you understand? Young people going to university, the parents concerned about getting a job, the need for housing, and those fundamental issues, and the need to create a sustainable path for development of the people. And I believe that this vexing issue has to be brought to a closure, of course, with dialogue which we have had. Now, Mr. George made reference to starting from the top. From the top, and then the Prime Minister, notwithstanding what you may think about it, someone went into law. And Mr. George would know, of course, having worked with me for a while, and you said, Mr. Gregor, you are happy to see me come here tonight. I can take bruises. I mean, the mere fact that I may sound like someone who dress nice, dress is nice. Mr. George would have known that he took me to the bushes in the heights of Shirodale. I was also SSU trained, along with the likes of Perry. So I was not only an investigator, SSU trained, trained in the US, and to go out in the bush when everybody was being a minister. Mr. George and I would have worked on a number of issues. He accompanied me several times overseas. For a matter of fact, I pray that my place was stolen. They stayed back to retrieve my place for me. So there's no hard feeling of this thing. But I want us to put the first. Because I'm saying that we run the risk of dominating. And if we are not tempered in our approach over something that we can resolve. And if we look at every one of the proposed intended bills, they're all intended to make voting process, election laws more transparent. I would like to have seen a debate where we could have identified the vote the section that deals with voter ID card, the section that deals with access to the national media, the section that deals with the confirmation of registration, and in a dispassionate manner, try to impress on the public that these things can work. So let's talk about the good things first. But to set aside everything, I believe is not helping the public. So I'm happy to be here tonight, to have been here tonight. On the issue about no bail, I made a statement, and I think the statement is there. But what we have been able to do from a policy standpoint, the matter has been dealt with by competent practitioners, senior counsel, and of course, well-renowned, and staff of the Director of Public Prosecutions Office. And we're confident that represent the interests of the state and to represent the interests of justice. I'll leave that at this point. There are issues litigated here tonight by Mr. Linton in terms of he being before the court, and I have nothing to do with what happened at the court. I don't stand the bench, neither the Prime Minister. And so these are issues, of course, that have to be ventilated before the court. And on the whole issue about the made reference to the specific issue of our CBI funds, they have a right to go to it. That is right, like anybody else to go to it. And we will continue from a policy standpoint to do everything possible to defend the interest of the state and to have people who are so qualified and trained to represent the interest of the case of the state when matters are brought before the state. So I'm looking forward to part of a discussion again that can be helpful to the listening public. But you know, as someone, I mean, I'm a politician, but someone who's good in the area of sociology and law and society, my appetite when you're having a discussion is to make a reference to empirical facts, to make a reference to the relevant pieces of legislation that we're talking about, and to look at the law as we have been trained. But to look at the law and how it interplays with the society. That's and then when we're talking about our election laws, we have to make a reference to international best practices. what obtains in order to increase. In America, in most of the states, you can vote on a driver's license. If you're a military official, you can vote on your military card. The same applies in Canada. So what is the beef in a small country like Dominica? And going back to Sabara's report, the majority of Dominicans in a survey said that their preference is for a driver's license, passport, or national ID card. During the consultation, most Dominicans were against a voter ID card. The government, as an adult, said, we're going to go to voter ID card, but with facial recognition. And during my interaction with opposition members, supporters, they themselves are very much concerned of they having to go and confirm and reconfirm the names on a list because they're already registered to vote. So this is not a Labour Party issue. It is to the core of the right of the unsuspecting, I use that word, citizen who is not in any kind of tangle over vote of electoral reform. So I do not that any government or political party has the right to take the citizens of this country for granted by consistently imposing impediments on their rights to vote. That notwithstanding, we believe that these various versions of the pieces of bills before us is a compromise and progressive and futuristic move. For my part, the comment of the Electoral Commission was sent to the aegis chambers and largely was accepted. There has been consultation, and I believe that we have once and for all to start the process of enacting electoral reform laws, and of course, it's an incremental process. And as we move forward, we can, because in law, the pith and substance of any law is when it's been applied. So there's always room for amendments to be made and adding additional of subsidiary laws to the parent acts. And that is how the whole issue of campaign reform can be addressed as we study or social and cultural reality to see what formula best suits. And I want to end here tonight and to say thank you to your listeners too, even those who disagree with me. I appreciate that.
Mr. Blackwell, let me tell you, whether people disagree with you or not, I mean, there has to be room for disagreement. None of us are perfect. So, I mean, we all, we fall short in the eyes of the Almighty One of them. And so it's okay if people disagree with us. That does not mean necessarily that we're wrong, but it does not mean we're always right either. There's just a couple of things I would like to say on what you've said before I go to Dr. Andre. One of them is that I agree that no obstacle should be put in the way of people voting who have the right, are eligible to vote. No obstacle should be put in their way. It should not make it difficult, should make it easy. And we agree on that. You just have to ensure that whatever we do is making it easy for the right people to vote. And secondly, on the matter of the survey, I remember that survey. I remember on this show here, we commented on that. And I personally said I did not think that survey was, I did not accept the way this survey was done for a number of reasons. I don't remember all of the arguments now, but that survey about the 66%, the way it was done, I'm not sure it did not allow people to vote how many times and so on. There were some arguments, I don't remember all the details, but I have it on record somewhere, I look it up. But at the time, I did not find that the way the survey was done was very reliable. So I wanted to say that as well. And but basically, all in all, I have to tell you that, I mean, what you did here tonight is that you try to let us focus on the laws. And one of the things I said to you earlier, Clark, while we were doing that, I said, yes, we all read the laws just like you did. I'm sure Mr. Andre did, and Lennox, I did, and so on, Nicholas. But the point is, as I said, there are many areas in which we can agree in that legislation, but there are a number of areas. And you notice I focus on some of them, like the re-registration, like the voter ID card, like this whole question of bribery and treating and so on. I focus on 3 or 4 or 5 specific areas. And that is it. It's not like I'm disagreeing everything. I'm not throwing the baby out in the bathwater, if you see what I'm saying. I'm just saying there are a number of areas I think we still need some refining. And I think we should be open to dialogue on those areas. That is why I fully support the recommendation that the technical team with the ERC and the government technocrats could sit down and look at those specific areas there, not the whole of the legislation, but before the second and third. I think it would be helpful if that was done so people can say, yes, we did have a chance to meet and to dialogue again. It doesn't mean that everything we put on the table was accepted, but the point is, it demonstrates the willingness to continue dialoguing. As I said, I think debates are critical in any democracy. And I think I really hope, I would like to rely on you, Mr. Blackmore, because I can see you open the debate to try to encourage debates, because there's no reason why a prime minister and the leader of the opposition should not have a debate from time to time to iron out the issues, or candidates should not have debates. So I encourage debates, and I noticed that the Sixth Form College is doing a good work in that, getting a lot of debates going on between the young people, and that is very good. I think I'd like to see that encouraged at the national level. So Dr. Andre, I wanted to, and then thank you so much, Mr. Blackmore, for being here tonight. Dr. Andre, your closing remarks, sir?
Let me say good evening to everyone. Let me commend all the panelists, Mr. Blackmore, Mr. George, Mr. Linton, Lambie, Shumain in the back, Mr. G, and so on, for hosting this debate. I feel somewhat unfortunate for Mr. Blackmore, because the sad part of it is Mr. Blackmore is presenting these reforms as almost a come to Jesus moment of the government, an altruistic, honest to goodness attempt at electoral reform. But unfortunately for Mr. Blackmore, he is haunted by the facts with respect to the government's adherence or compliance to genuine campaign reform. From the infamous email in 2008 to the various reports of the OAS, the CARICOM Secretariat, the civic group in Dominica, somebody called Mia Motley, most recently Lord Byron, or whatever the thing is, Dennis Byron. The government has shown a disinclination to impose certain core values that will ensure free and fair election. That's the bottom line. Regardless of what Mr. Blackmore says, it is not by coincidence there is no mention about campaign finance reform. It is not by coincidence there is no specific provision criminalizing the transportation of persons. Mr. Blackmore talk about you have to prove nonsense. Proof is not a difficult thing from any type of legal perspective. The whole question of the confirmation rather than a new voters list, this is not by accident. This is just the most recent manifestation of the intransigence of this government in terms of genuine electoral reform. That's the only inescapable fact. So what Mr. Blackmore is doing is selling us a bunch of goods which, quite frankly, are inherently defective. He has to come here and sell these goods because he has his master to serve. That is the unfortunate reality. I have nothing against Mr. Blackmore, but the reality is that he has to come and sell a bill of sale to the Dominican electorate. He can't do anything less. If he was to say, I oppose, if Mr. Blackmore had said, for example, I think the government should institute campaign finance reform, if they get on with yours tonight, whatever that means. So we understand We understand the Mr. Blackmores of this world, just as we understand the fellow from Kalibishi who started writing cute little messages and then he stopped suddenly. We understand Mr. Austri saying certain things. I'm prepared to accept what Mr. Blackmore says about respecting the opposite sex and so on, but it's not people saying things about you, Mr. Blackmore. It's someone from the cabinet. So don't knock on people when they haven't accused you of anything. Say it's your own people who are saying things. So while I commend you from coming up, but I am realistic, you have to present a sale of goods to Dominica, which is divorced from the reality. And to me, that is what we achieved this evening. You have been a loyal soldier on behalf of your administration, and I leave you to decide the propriety of being that person or the propriety of not speaking truth to power. So I think I apologize to listening public that we've taken so long. But I think, quite frankly, despite what a couple of viewers or scholars may say, I think it's a worthwhile initiative. And unfortunately, I don't envision more of these discussions too much because, again, quite frankly, many of Mr. Blackmore's colleagues will be loath to come and speak in a fashion that reflects his or her belief system in fear of offending the GOD. And I'm not talking about, what's the GOD again?
It's the government, the government of Dominica.
Oh, thank you, Mr. G. You are so smart. I thought you were sleeping. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I thank Mr. Linton, Mr. Blackmore, Mr. George. Again, as I said, I'm happy that Mr. Blackmore may not agree to it, but at least we maintain a semblance of civility that is conspicuous by its absence on Q9, on DBS, and on Kyrie FM. So thank you very much.
Mr. Blackmore, before we say good night, I don't know if you wanted to have any brief, because Dr. Andre made some comments. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to just remark on any of that.
Well, I can't really be that brief. So, I mean, I don't think there's any need to actually litigate anything beyond what we have said here tonight, except to say that we're entitled to our views and we can be respectful. But I believe that I'm not known to be scared of speaking my mind. You don't have to come out in the public to speak your mind. But at the same time, what I'm for is to ensure that there's the party in office, in my view, from what I've seen and what I've experienced, that have transformed people's lives, that have transformed the country. And I believe that notwithstanding how some of us may feel, but to have been given the opportunity at the age of 31 to superintend over the affairs of this country at a time when it was actually at its lowest point, and to have realized what you have realized thus far in our experiment that we're seeking to perfect is remarkable. And notwithstanding what Mr. Andrea said and others, but I believe that is a story that needs to be told and rewritten in our Dominica story going forward as a nation. So thank you for allowing me to be here tonight and to say finally, the notion that somehow that the Labour Party administration is not for free and fair election, to me, if that were the case, we're not have actually be taking those bills to Parliament. And the final point I would like to make, Mr. Gregor, if you would allow me, is on the whole issue about the leader of the opposition not being installed. And then you had the main opposition party who made a decision in its attempt to create a constitutional crisis in this country by not partaking in the general election. That was a choice made. You cannot now come and blame anyone else for any vacuum that may have emerged in the opposition. And so we cannot construct our reality and then blame somebody else. That's not how the world works. Do you get my point? And I believe that these are some of the, to my view, some of the introspection that we need to do when we tend to blame other people. And my final point I want to make for the hearing of Mr. Andre, leading up to, I've never said that before publicly, leading up to the incident that actually manifested itself on the street when you had fires, and even my wife is a hard-working lady, hardworking. When I met her, she used to drive trucks, everything, standard trucks, and even her place was attacked. You get my point? And days before that, operatives of the Workers' Party came to me. And asking me that they were willing to work with me. They came to me, and Mr. Leonard is there. He knows who came to me. And there's no way that I was going to get myself involved in backstabbing anybody who have been involved, who actually was one of the guys who actually got me into politics. Shortly thereafter, the same Blackmore that they wanted to exalt had to pay the price for standing firm. So I know what I know. So you see, so I was not trained to backstab anybody. If somebody does something I know within my conscience is not right, I'll do what I have to do. But when you go in and you're trying to destroy Mr. Blackman's name, but months before, you're saying to him that he had a chance to be prime minister if you were to support us. I've never made that public punishment before. I ran to be a member of parliament. I never ran to be a leader of any party. Much less to work with any opposition members to have been installed by way of any insurrection as prime minister. I wanted to end by saying that.
Okay. Good. But I mean, you're saying that in the absence of any rebuttal from anybody else, and I think it might be good if other people had a chance to rebut that, because other people may have a different perspective, a point of view on that. But nonetheless, you wanted to make this statement. I'm glad we gave you the opportunity to make it. I'm pretty sure that might be something we might hear about again. But Mr. Blackmore, again, I want to thank you really for being here. And I want to just reiterate two things here before, as I close and say goodnight to everybody. One, on this question of a leader of the opposition, I think something should be done about that. That the Constitution requires an opposition leader. And I think no matter what excuse we have, who we want to blame for who caused that, there should be a leader of the opposition. The second thing I wanted to say is this, that I really think that, you know, when we look at it, you're a man of the law, I think 7 years is too long to have people on charges and they cannot be prosecuted. 7 years is too long. Things like that should be thrown out for want of prosecution. And I mean, I know it's politics in there, but I think if we look at the law and the way it's supposed to operate, I don't think anybody should have to be dragged to court for 7 years and their cases still cannot be resolved. This is something that we have to deal with, no matter which side it's on. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it should be fair. 7 years is just too long. I've seen some leaders of the opposition, they go to court how many times over 7 years, and then the case is just postponed. I can understand if there's some real, but if just postponed because cases, they might not be witnesses or so, for whatever reason, 7 years is just too long. I thought I might just say that, just to say that if there's anything that can be done about those things, not just for the opposition people who are in court on incitement, for anybody at all. I mean, in most jurisdictions like Canada, for example, 7 years, this thing would probably have been thrown out already. All right, so I just thought I would say that in parting here. And a final thing, Mr. Blackmore, my role here tonight was not to support any political party. As I say, I made it clear, I don't care what the Europe have to say or the Freedom have to say or Labour have to say about electoral reform. The electoral reform we want is what is good for Dominica, best practices, follow best international practices, do what is good for Dominica, and let the chips fall where they may. You understand what I'm saying? Free and fair election, a level playing field, because elections have consequences. So again, I want to thank you, Mr. Blackmon. Thank Lennox. Yes, and thank Lennox and Nicholas and Lambie and Sherwin and Dr. Andre and all our people on Facebook and so on who are still, many of them are still there with us on YouTube and all the other platforms and listen on the radio globally and every nook and cranny down there. Thank you so much for staying with us tonight. I hope we can come back maybe with another discussion on electoral reform again. I certainly hope that some of the concerns can be taken into account and I can see a little bit more dialogue on those three or four narrow areas that where there seem to be some disagreement on. We hope we can still see some more dialogue to resolve some of those issues and narrow a gap. All right. So thank you so much, everybody. And Mr. Blackmore, I wish you a very good night. And remember, the station is always open to you at any time. Okay? So
okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, good night.